Good morning, County Council. Welcome back to day 2 of this week and also round 2 of our budget talks today. So I would like to call to order this committee the whole agenda of December 12th, 2025. At this point in time, as you are able, please join us in the standing for and singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Let us begin by acknowledging with respect that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires, known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. We give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known collectively as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the traditional keepers of these lands and water since time immemorial. In our south lies the traditional territories of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Haudenosaunee. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and friendship with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. At this point in time, I would like to put out a call for any declarations of interest for today's agenda. Seeing none on the screen or in the room, we'll move on and we will carry on with our items for direction and discussion. Before we table any kind of motion for consideration, we are going to keep working through the details of the budget, and then we will return to item 6 and start to sew up all of the various motions that we may need in order to be able to pass this budget. So with that, I will welcome the CAO to the lectern to remind us where we are and lead us into where we're going today.
Thank you, Warden Madrosavs, and good morning, councillors. So as the warden indicated, I'll just do a quick recap and what staff are planning to present today. First, we'll finish up where we left off with the corporate services budget presentation. And again, we're going to be using the PDF version of the draft budget document. So if you can reference the PDF page number when asking a question about a specific project or a line item, that would be much appreciated. Following the finishing up of the corporate services budget, we'll go into the planning community development, where we'll cover the planning, agriculture, and forestry budgets, the economic development, tourism, and culture, plus community transportation budgets. We will then move into human services, where we'll cover social services, housing, long-term care, and paramedic services. Following the department presentations, we'll review the previous recommended changes, including those that have already been approved by committee, and then receive any further direction from council so that we can bring back a bylaw to the January 8th meeting for council to approve the amended budget. As a quick reminder, the original draft budget was at 6.68% net levy increase. With the recommended changes and the changes that have already been approved, the percent net levy increase would currently sit at 5.17%. So that's a reduction of just over 1.5% potentially. To put that in perspective, the average single detached home not on water would see an estimated annual increase to their taxes of approximately $63.94 per year. So that's just a quick recap. And before we go in the department budgets, any questions for staff before we get started?
Okay, well, thank you for the introduction and thank you for you and your entire staff team working so hard to try to find options for us to consider in order to bring that rate down. It is much appreciated the way that you've been able to lend your expertise so that we can consider all of what we can contemplate on the table to bring our rate down as much as possible. So thank you very much for that work. So with that, then I will put it out if there are any questions from any members just before we get started. And obviously things might come to mind as we carry on. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up in the room and nor online. So I think we are ready to proceed. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So now I'll turn it over to Mary Lou and she will start where we left off under the corporate services with court security. It starts at page 79 in the PDF document.
Thanks, Randy. Good morning, County Council. Feels like we were just here. We talked a little bit about court security last week. So the court security budget was new for 2025, and that's to assist Owen Sound with regional court costs that exceed the amount provided in ministry funding. So the 2025 budget had $250,000 in it. That was a placeholder based on best estimates. We know that that was approximately 117,000 short. And therefore, we have increased the budget for 2026 to $400,000. And I'm happy to take any questions on court security if you have any.
Okay, looking around the room, any questions on this page? Not seeing any or online. So it looks like we're good to proceed. Thank you.
I think next is Jody with Information Services, page 81.
Okay, thank you. I know you've all been waiting for the exciting conclusion to the cliffhanger I left you on last week. So I'm going to talk about the information services budget. And it is on page 81 of the PDF. The information services budget is essentially the cost of running the network, and it is distributed back to the other departmental budgets in the form of an interfunctional costs. Overall, this budget is increasing by $102,000. Plus we're showing an increase of an additional $45,000, but those are costs that have been in the budgets historically. They've been in other budgets. They're internet costs that are just moving into the IS budget. So not new, just redistributed for that 45,000. The areas where we're seeing the increase, we are seeing a $5,000 increase in the software that we're using for door access control at FOB systems. We use the same software, the same system across multiple sites, and we've been expanding. So with the increase of the new paramedic space, the new depot that's going to come online in Eaton, we'll be paying a little bit more just for managing more sites. We are also including a $10,000 increase in our IT service management software. So that's the software that we use for handling tickets or help desk requests, as well as our basically our IT asset inventory, our knowledge base, and making the IT department run in as close as we can to a framework in terms of IT management. So we're expanding that basically to include other departments, so that can be more of a corporate services help desk and not just strictly IT. So we've already had comms and records management and website requests in that software, and we will be including potentially including HR next year. We are seeing some increases that are just inflationary for our applications like Adobe and Microsoft. So the big project that's driving some increases here is our server hardware, which I did speak about in terms of the capital budget. So we've always had hardware that we purchase and run on site, and we are planning on using hardware as a service or hosted hardware next year. Regardless of which way we go, the cost would be really comparable. They are higher than we were planning last year, but just based on where everything has gone. If we had stayed on premise, those costs would be higher as well. So that last year we were planning 122,000 as a reserve contribution, and this year we're showing that as a line item for $175,000 a year. But that also includes reducing what we're currently doing now for backups, which is in Microsoft's cloud. It includes reducing our software line by 18,000 because that software would come with the new service. Plus there's an additional 6,000 in software that we use specifically for those data centers and long-term care that we wouldn't need anymore. The other item that increased significantly is our switches. And again, switches are a capital project, but the reserve contributions flow through this budget along with just a couple other capital projects, and that is increasing by 32,000 a year. The only other addition that we have in that budget is $6,000 in professional services that we would use to switch from our on-premise server hardware to that hardware as a service. And that is the highlights of the IS budget.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I will look for questions. We'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Thank you, Jody, for the high-level summary. Do most staff working in this building and other buildings still have a hardwired phone? And the reason I ask is it needed in this pervasive cell phone atmosphere? Do we still need hardwired phones? Please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Warden. No, most of our staff are no longer using hardwired phones. We have switched to Teams phones, so it's a soft phone. It just runs through the computer. You can take it just like if you've attended council virtually. It can work the same way, either as a video call or a voice call. You can also use the app on your phone. We do have hardwired phones for those few positions that take far more calls. So housing, social services, front desk staff, if they are taking a lot of calls, then they can use that hardwired phone just because it is easier to kind of tune out the noise, continue using your computer to input data from residents and that sort of thing.
Okay, any other questions? Not seeing any. Okay, then thank you very much. And we're on to Director Shaw and property, page 84 for people following along.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and good morning, Council. The county property summary or county property budget includes the administration building and also what we refer to as the Morrison building next door. It has an increase of $38,300. It is an increase. It consists of primarily due to contracted services and the maintenance of this building. So looking at things such as elevator and generator maintenance, heating and cooling. There's also an inflationary increase in there for insurance and utilities. The capital budget has an increase of $9,800, and that is a couple of projects that will be happening. There is $6,000 for the replacement of the fire alarm panel at the Morrison building, $37,600 for carpet and flooring replacement, and we have an increase to our reserve for future capital replacement at this building of $9,800. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions on property? Not seeing any here. No, thank you very much. And Director Spicer, you're going to present to us page 93, provincial offenses. Page 93, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the provincial offenses budget, so Grey County operates provincial offenses on behalf of Bruce and Grey counties. And we share the expenses, any net revenue based on population. So Grey gets 58.35% and Bruce gets 41.65%. So the budget continues to provide a revenue source to the county and includes a net departmental operating requirement. So positive versus an expense of $107,100 compared to $91,600 in 2025. So we're showing an increase in $15,500 in net revenue. Now, a note as our expenses go up, there isn't necessarily a correlation in revenue, so we don't have the ability to control the fines, nor do we have the ability to control when people pay a fine. And it came up, and I believe it was at Budget and Finance, there was a question about how revenue is recorded. So is the outstanding tickets on our books as an accounts receivable? And the answer is no. So the province maintains the accounts receivable, and we only record on our books what is actually paid in a year. So it's the one exception that accountants probably, we're not in, it's an exception to the rule that we always accrue our revenue, but you can't accrue what you don't know. And so it's an accepted accounting practice that the revenue is only recorded as it is received. And speaking to Amanda Kokas, who was unable to be here with us today, ticket revenue, we're projecting to increase by $100,000 in 2026 to 2.1 million as more fines are being paid and more cases are being processed in court. And we're seeing more court days, which is a benefit, but it also increases our expenditures. We're also seeing an increase in costs for requests for interpreters. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Okay, looking around the room, any questions? Not seeing any. We do not have any questions for you. Thank you. However, don't go go anywhere because you're next up for tax and other on page 97.
Thank you. So this budget provides a net levy reduction of $1,518,500, which is an increase of $387,800 compared to the 2025 budget. And the primary reason for that is we've increased the supplemental tax revenue by $260,700 based on what we're seeing in recent years, and decreased the expense for tax write-offs by $127,000. And so we've made a note that write-offs have been budgeted based on 2025 year-end projections and analyzing 2017 to 2023. And we've estimated the supplementary taxation based on MPAC's preliminary new assessment forecast report.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. So questions there? Okay, no questions at the moment, Director Spicer. And with that, we will look at WSIB and weekly indemnity, and that is pages 99 to 102, presented by Director Morrow.
Good morning, members of council, and through you, Madam Warden. The WSIB and weekly indemnity budget is remaining static for 2026 and 2027. It is based on an average that we do of the past 3 years experience rating of injuries among our staff. We are Schedule 2 employer for WSIB, and the weekly indemnity, the short-term disability, is for our long-term care and paramedic divisions that we self-insure. I'm happy to take any questions if you have some.
Any questions on that? No questions for you. Thank you. Well, Director Spicer, I think you're back at the lectern again. But after that, Director Taylor is going to give you a break. Health unit, healthcare and education, pages 103 to 105.
To try and make things easier at Budget and Finance, we grouped everything I was speaking to together, and it did create some confusion. So we went back to the order of operations in the document. So for public health, it requires a net levy requirement of $1,743,400, which is an increase of $25,000. We've included in this budget a $60,100 transfer from the Safe Restart Reserve to offset part of the contribution. So if that hadn't been done, you'd be looking at an $85,100 increase in this budget. So Greybush Public Health, presented its 2025 budget to the Board of Health in April 2025. That approved a 1% increase to the cost-shared mandatory programs. We've anticipated a similar increase in 2026. We've had some very preliminary conversations with our counterparts in finance at the health unit, but however, they won't be passing a budget until well after ours. So that's our best estimate for public health.
Okay, so with that, any questions? Not really much to deliberate there, that it is what it is, so thank you. All right, so then in that case, then with no further questions for you, Director Spicer, do you want to keep talking about the other items next? Okay.
Yes, thank you. So we have healthcare and education, and everyone's aware that we have a contribution that we're making to Bright Shores that began in 2023. So allocating 200,000 annually from 2023 to 2027. We did have a higher contribution previously to the healthcare funding reserve, and that had been reduced in the past to 209,500. At Budget and Finance in September, they recommended that that contribution be reduced to $200,000. So that's where it sits right now. And currently, the only request that we are funding is that contribution to Bright Shores, which is a 5-year, $1 million commitment, and that will be fully funded in the 2027 budget. So currently, this budget has a $200,000 annual contribution to reserve, and to strengthen local health initiatives. And the healthcare funding policy, as it was written, asks that if there are requests, that they come to the county and they're not going to each of our member municipalities, because you are funding the request through the county, and that it's for capital infrastructure or equipment. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions there? Not seeing any. Looks like we are good to proceed. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to planning and community development, and the section begins on page 106. And we're not even anywhere close to break, so you have all the time you need, Director Taylor.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam Warden and members of council, and good morning to you all. Yeah, seeing how efficient all of my colleagues have been with their presentations this morning, I feel like I might have written a little too much, but I appreciate the extra hours. So just before we get started, I would, as I always, like to thank the wonderful work and support we get from our finance staff. There's a lot of hands that go into preparing a budget, even a budget that's on the smaller side, like planning, but do so appreciate all the help from finance staff and all the help from senior management in terms of asking those questions and getting to the stage where we are today. So with respect to planning, we are divided into 3 broad functions, and I thought if it pleases the warden and council, we'll go through each of these functions and maybe have a brief break for questions in between. With respect to the first function, as the warden noted, this is starting on page 112 of the PDF, and this is dealing with our planning and civic addressing function that we fulfill in this regard. And just harkening back to Sue's presentation from a week ago, I just want to make it abundantly clear that this budget, this draft 26 budget and the 27 budget projection does not include anything to do with the hybrid or centralized planning services. We're still working with those interested municipalities to prepare costing on that, and that will come forward as a separate report at some point in the new year with some options for county and municipal councils to consider in that regard. With respect to the planning budget, it's largely a status quo budget, if I can say that. There is a projected increase of $73,000. That increase is driven by a few different factors. First and foremost, and if you think back to Liz's presentation from yesterday afternoon, we are projecting to see a slowdown for 26 and 27 in terms of growth numbers, and Grey is not unique in that. We're seeing that all across the province. So that anticipated lesser revenue in that regard, we're projecting at $35,000. With respect to some of the other drivers of the $73,000 projected increase, the non-union step increases and the COLA for planning. Planning is entirely a non-union department. We have a lot of staff members that aren't quite at the top of their band yet, so that's coming in at approximately $45,000. In potential good news, we are projecting, and I should knock on wood when I say this, we are projecting less in legal fees needed next year. We're projecting less time before the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we're thankful to have that time to be working on other projects in that regard. We are proposing a very slight increase in our training and conferences budget of $1,400, an associated small increase in our travel and expenses of $2,700. With respect to civic addressing, again, it's very much a status quo. There is approximately a $4,000 increase, and that's based on primarily the purchase services, which are tied to our population numbers. And so those services, we get assessed each year based on our population. So as our population grows, those costs also increase. With respect to capital, most of our capital is funded through reserves. Some of it's our studies reserve, our development charges reserves. We are projecting a net levy for capital of $24,700. Just as a bit of a refresher in terms of the major capital projects for 26, we are looking at $130,000 from one-time funding to support some of the studies needed on those potential surplus land sites in both Durham and Markdale in that regard. And that was taken through a report that Liz brought to council in September of this year. We're undergoing our development charges review and background study review based on the pre-approval from earlier this year. That project is actually out in RFP right now, and that's $66,300. And then we're looking at some regular implementation dollars for our housing action plan, our age-friendly community strategy, and implementing the archaeological management plan. So at a high level, that's what we have for planning and civic addressing, but through the warden, certainly happy to take any questions on those pieces.
Okay, any questions thus far? See, no hands up. Oh, there's one, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Scott, for that. The $30,000 in 2026 to aid in the implementation of the housing action plan. Can you just expand on it a little bit? Literally, what aid to implement do you need the $30,000 for? Please.
Yeah, through the warden. So this money, and we've had a version of this in the budget the past 2 years and haven't come close to spending that total dollars. It's to aid in the implementation of the housing action plan. So in some cases, it could be looking at money for additional data sources. In past years, it was looked at, some money was spent with respect to the engineering costs and other associated professional fees with respect to understanding what we would need on those surplus land sites. This year, now that we've spent those dollars on engineering, we know what we need, and that's that separate line item of the 130 to get into that. And then it's also looking at any public facing materials. So if we're doing more in terms of like an additional residential unit guide or things like that, to develop those materials. So as I said, I think we've had 25 and 30 in the past few years. We haven't come close to spending those dollars just yet. But it is meant to give some flexibility to implementing the various action items in the housing action plan.
Okay, any further questions? We'll go to Councillor Greg.
Thanks. And you mentioned civic addressing, and it's somewhat of the needs are driven because of growth. I anticipate I know the answer already, and you're not able to slide funding from development charges horizontally to fund that. But what's the correlation to, we're undertaking a new DC update, and if the need is driven by growth, as you just explained, is that something that we can pursue funding with development charges?
That's a good, through you, Madam Warden. That's a good question. Thank you for that, Councillor Greg. It's something we could certainly explore once we have a consultant on the development charges background study. The civic addressing piece is supporting the civic addressing and the 911. So the purchase services are from the Owen Sound Police Dispatch in that regard. and they are funding per capita, we could investigate with the DC consultant whether there is any opportunity there. But it's based on that per population number. And you're right, as the population continues to grow, there is a slight growth related increase there each year, but we can look into that further.
Okay, anything further? No, okay, that, no more questions for that section.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Warden. So next up, we have our agricultural section, and this is starting on page 126 of the PDF. And just as a sort of preface to both the agriculture and the forestry and trails side of things, components of both the agricultural budget and the forestry and trails budget are under contract services to Gray Sauble Conservation Authority. As we talked about yesterday with respect to the proposed changes to the Conservation Authority's structures across Ontario, we have just recently renewed that agreement with Gray Sauble for 1 year. We haven't entered into a multi-year renewal at this stage based on the uncertainty in that regard. So more specifically with respect to agriculture, which is on page 126, the services that Gray Sauble provides in that regard are with respect to the forest management bylaw enforcement. So that is under the agriculture budget, not under the forestry and trails budget. With respect to some of the other costs in the agriculture budget, we have our beavers and coyotes bounties in that regard. And then we have the contributions that the county makes to both Gray Agricultural Services and 4-H. So overall, this budget is again very much a status quo, and the increase is projected at $5,100. At this stage, we are projecting to keep both the beaver and coyote bounties in at $15,000 each. I will say, and again, maybe knock on wood, so far in 2025, the claims for each of the beavers and coyotes are down from previous years. We are continuing to look into what's appropriate with respect to bylaw updates and hope to bring something to council in the new year in that regard. And again, beyond that, it's largely status quo. There is no capital component to our agricultural budget. And the one final thing I'll say is, as part of the forest management bylaw review, we're also looking at the potential for increased revenue in that regard. So again, that's something we'll come back to council in the new year. But we are assessing our fees for what we call the minor exemption applications, and whether or not there's any additional revenue sources through that bylaw, which could help recoup the cost that we pay to Gray Sauble of those enforcement services in that regard. So maybe just pause there before we get on to forestry and trails and take any questions through the warden if there are any.
Okay, thank you. So just before we go to forestry and trails, any questions on the ag portion? No questions.
Okay, great. And with that, we'll move on to forestry and trails, and the summary is on page 126 of the PDF, and forestry and trails more specifically is at page 130 of the PDF. So with respect to forestry and trails for 2026, again, it is sort of a status quo budget, although there is a projected increase of $125,000, and I'll get to what makes up that increase in just a sec. But when I say status quo budget, I mean we're focusing on maintaining and in some cases rehabilitating the trails and the forestry properties we have in that regard. So when I say trails, I mean both the trails in the forest and the CP Rail Trail. With respect to the CP Rail Trail in both 2025 and going into 2026 and beyond, we've had a wonderful partnership with Transportation Services, and previously we'd always been lucky enough to use their services for helping maintain the bridges and the culverts on the CP Rail Trail. So Bob Cherry and the bridge crew in that regard have been very helpful. But we've been working with Pat's team on other elements where their knowledge and equipment can assist in that regard, and so that includes repairs on the CP Rail Trail, grading to maintain the surface that we have. And so through those partnerships, it has resulted in savings, and again, just been wonderful partners to work with. So getting back to that $125,000 proposed increase, Although that's a large number, this isn't entirely new work. And so what's making up this increase in part is because in the past, we've funded that buckthorn removal through a mixture of levy and reserves. And so this would be the first year, if we go with what's in the draft budget, that would be funded entirely through levy. So that alone is a $39,000 increase that we'd previously funded through reserves in that regard. Similar with respect to some of the trail rehabilitation, previously we'd funded 25,000 of that through reserves. In the draft budget right now, it is proposed to come entirely through levy in that regard. We were at the time when this budget was written also anticipating less revenue with respect to the forest tenders in our own county forest properties. What you see in the draft budget is $33,000 less in revenue. But I'm pleased to say, and I believe Sue or Randy highlighted in their presentation last week, that we have gotten the results from those tenders now, and they were 14,000 higher than we thought. So that 33,000 is subtracted by 14 in that regard. With respect to other things, Grace Zabel is looking at hiring a summer student this year to assist with the work in the forestry and trails. We're also looking at continuing to only plow one parking lot in the winter. We had just good discussions on that earlier this year, so we would continue to plow the Collapore lot, but the other lots along the CP Rail Trail and the county forest would be closed for the winter. And then finally, we're also looking at discontinuing the county's membership with FSC. So that would be approximately a $7,800 savings each year. With respect to capital, we will have our regular maintenance work on the bridges and culverts. We've got, again, our projected $25,000 in land survey work on the CP Rail Trail to bring those remaining sections of the trail into land titles. And then we're also partnering with Transportation Services on a bridge and culvert assessment, of which planning's contribution is projected at $16,000. And so with that, we're also projecting $116,700 going back into reserves to fund these future projects in that regard. So with that, that's what I have for forestry and trails. But again, happy to take any questions.
Okay, we'll go to the deputy warden first.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Thank you, Scott, for that. Do we account anywhere in the budget for work in kind from various groups, volunteers in the community?
Through you, Madam Warden, in our county budget, we don't. Trying to think how I should put this. We certainly have some volunteer work being done. There's an individual in Owen Sound that regularly removes dog strangling vine from a section of the CP Rail Trail in Owen Sound. And then we also have work that's done by some of the clubs that have agreements with the county. So I'm thinking the Snowmobile Club, the Ontario Federation of Trail Riders, and the ATV clubs with respect to work that they do on the county's forestry or forests and CP Rail Trail in that regard. And so in some cases, with respect to the ATV club in the past, council may recall, they gave a $10,000 donation to the county last year. In other cases, they're performing regular maintenance projects along the trail that we're not necessarily accounting for. So the Snowmobile Club just recently has been doing some brushing along the side of the CP Rail Trail. So it's something we could look into further and try to maybe quantify that. But at this stage, I don't have a great number to say it's X number of thousands of dollars, but we are sure appreciative of the work that they're doing. One of the other initiatives that we're looking into is the ability to have almost like an adopt a trail kind of program, similar to what transportation does on their roads, whereby you might have volunteers going in and helping maintain and clean those trails within very prescribed boundaries. We're not looking for people to go chainsaws or anything else, but there's opportunities we're looking at there.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, I do not see any hands. Thank you. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to call up Director Myers, and we're going to begin on page 137 with economic development and then work our way down through the various sections. It's going to be live Director Myers for the next 5 sections, so welcome.
Thank you very much, Warden. Good morning, County Council. As the word mentioned, I am starting on page 137. And I've got on the top of my page here, Kara, exclamation, exclamation, because I just want to do a shout out to Kara. She is our financial analyst and has been phenomenal in helping us prepare this budget today. So economic development, tourism and culture budget as a whole for operating and capital in 2026 requires a levy of 3.896 million compared to 3.593 million in 2025, which is an increase of 303,000 across operating and capital. The 2026 budget continues the focus on the priorities identified through the Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Master Plan that sets the departmental vision for the next 10 years in pursuit of the corporate strategic goal building communities for the future. In 2026, we move to the theme market, and that comes to the fore, building on the work of the prior 2-year themes being foundation and study. In addition to sustaining relevant operations, this budget reflects improvements realized through departmental lean training that we've overgone in the last year, including a streamlined organizational structure, consolidation of purchasing practices across the department, and software efficiencies to reprioritize staff resources. The budget also includes merit increases and cost of living increases, alongside several computer replacements and licensing for staff. We also continue to prioritize professional development and the continuation of lean training so that we can ensure the EDTC team continues to acquire the expertise and seek further efficiencies by determining highest and best value of all resources, whether it is cash or people. Additionally, through the transition in 2025, Community Transit Initiative is now formally merged into the EDTC department from the office of the CAO. So the Economic Development, Tourism and Culture portfolio, it includes budgets for economic development and tourism, Sydenham campus, Grey Roots Museum and Archives, and community transportation. So before I move into the departmental areas, there's just 2 things that were raised seeking clarification during budget and finance that I thought that I would make note now. And the first is that while you're seeing the budget in particular areas and departmental focus, when we develop this budget, we look at it as a whole. It's right across EDTC. This is part of those lean improvements that I spoke about so that we can consider opportunities for consolidation of purchasing across to be able to reduce expenses in the department. So advertising is a great example that we'll see in the first section. By consolidating the planning and purchasing across our department, we've been able to reduce those expenses. It's also part of the prioritization each year based on master plan progression. So we're either prioritizing new items, deprioritizing items that no longer need to have the same focus, or maintaining where appropriate. So all this to say that when we're looking at this budget, we're moving and changing within the department focus areas and right across department focus areas to present what you have here today. The second is that we're assessing and building each budget line every year to ensure that this budget accurately reflects the strategic priorities and goals of the department. So many budget lines are fixed, such as IS costs, computer purchases, salary and benefits, or they're outside of our scope of control, like utilities and insurance. So through this assessment process, we also run a cost benefit analysis when we are doing proposals for new or different things. And that cost benefit analysis considers the staff capacity that we have in the department. It considers the cost of the staff time to do given projects versus the cost of the project or technology that we're looking to adopt. And then what is that end value at the end of the day for our clients and for our partners? So looking at economic development and tourism as our first budget, this has been intentionally developed to support the market theme of Master Plan Year 3 implementation. It prioritizes county and municipal access to Environics data. It enables the next phase of regional investment readiness feasibility studies and supports targeted regional marketing for tourism and investments, including continued production of the Gather campaign. And here you will see we have prioritized Year 3 Gather enhancements by reducing other budget lines. So where you see that $50,000 increase, I have taken dollars from other lines to make that possible. In terms of the economic development and tourism capital, there are 2 main projects in this year's budget. $10,000 to complete the necessary updates for Visit Grey website. That is being carried forward from 2025 and funded through reserve. And then $60,900 for the replacement of the tourism vehicle. The time has come. We have pushed it down the road for several years. We cannot keep pushing it. Our maintenance costs and the time that it is in the shop is far outweighing now. So $50,000 of that would come from the reserve that we have been saving towards, and 10 would be from the proceeds of the disposal of the vehicle themselves. And just a reminder from previous conversations, all of the capital levy contributions that we see, that's all going into those reserve contributions. Every project that we have right across our department is funded from reserve. So if you want, I can stop at that one before I head into the next in case there's any questions.
Yes, let's do that. So any questions for this part of the section? We'll go to Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. And my question is on, see the page, I have to scroll out. Well, it's on professional and consulting fees, 64,102 is the line item. In the PDF, it's page 144. Often professional and consulting fees oscillate up and down, I guess, depending on capital projects and so forth, when you have to go to an external consultant for specific jobs. It's a bit more of a continuum of 20,000, 20,500 every year. I'm just wondering, is there conversation that should be had about the services we're activating to go externally instead of internal resources being used, and that professional consulting fee being more of a one-off periodically when we're undertaking specific jobs, as opposed to an annual consistent expense?
Sure. Through you, Madam Warden. So that line that you're looking at, the 20,500 for 2026, that is the Think Compass agreement that we have. They are providing incredible fee for service. This is nowhere near touching the surface of what we should be paying for them. We do not have the in-house expertise or staffing following the last couple of budget rounds to be able to do this work internally. So instead of having a dedicated staff to do investment attraction permanently, this is a way that we're able to get some of those services to continue the work that we're doing across the region.
Is there a follow-up, Councillor Gregg?
Well, I guess that would lead me to the next question as to, I understand our purchasing thresholds, but are there, these are purchase services using public dollars. Do you undertake a bid, an open bidding process every 3 years, or you just referred to a single entity, and that probably invokes the follow-up question?
Perfect. Through you, Madam Warden. When we originally brought Think Compass on, that was through a single source approval through all of our purchasing policies. So with Mike Alguire and with the CIO and the treasurer, the purchasing policy now, $20,000 and under, enables me the ability as the director to determine who we may hire for what project. So it's within the threshold. That $500 accounts for the tax that we don't get back. To go out to market and ask for this type of service anywhere else, we will start at 6 digits. We know that for a fact. That is what it is kind of everywhere else. So we've been very, very fortunate to have this level of service for this cost for this many years.
And I imagine there's value in the continuity as well. Okay, not seeing any further hands. Looks like we are ready to proceed to the next section.
Thank you very much. So we are heading on to Sydenham campus then. And Sydenham, it is really achieving all of those goals that we set out in that original business plan, and to realize that the business plan that was written before a pandemic and coming through is still as valuable today as it was when we first introduced the concept is really something. So we're very, very proud of that. And it continues to support crucial workforce development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the region, including that targeted growth of Georgian College's skilled trades and apprenticeship program. In the budget, you will see anticipated revenues of $157,900 in tenant revenues, as well as interfunctional rent from children's services for $14,700. $80,000 of that revenue is transferred every year into reserve to help fund those capital projects, while the remaining offsets operating expenses, including cleaning. The property taxes, we do want to note, Where that used to come into the tenant revenue, it has now been reassigned to the appropriate line. So that's why you're seeing a decrease in the tenant revenues in this budget. It's not because they're going down, it's because we've actually budgeted to the proper line in 2026 going forward. Where you are seeing increase is cost of snow removal. Snow is not lessening for us, unfortunately, waste removal and cleaning supplies. And this is because the building is busy. In September, we had over 4,000 people through. We're tracking constantly and every room is full. The rentals are unbelievable. So it is going very, very well. In terms of the capital cost, there is a project for HVAC replacement. This started in 2024 with some rooftops. We're continuing. We have 21 independent interior units that need to be refreshed, as well as a couple more RTU units. So given the consideration of all potential possibilities and knowing how limited the space is in those ceilings, it has taken almost all year to figure out what does that next approach look like. So we won't be ready to actually do the projects until next year. So that is what you see there. Again, funded from reserve, not a levy impact. We'll stop there for Sydenham.
Thank you. And did you want to talk about the Business Enterprise Center as well briefly? So why don't you do that and then I'll collect any questions for either one.
Excellent, thank you. The Business Enterprise Center, this is one of 54 centers across the province that we run with the province, and it supports business startup, expansion, and succession planning, leading directly to job creation across the region. So the program is anticipated to receive provincial funding of $181,800 in 2026 through a new transfer payment agreement. We have not received that transfer payment agreement from the province yet. We have been told we will not receive it until the new year. So this is our best estimate. You'll see declines across this budget because we are not budgeting for the top up. That was something that was special in the last TPA. There is no guarantee it will come back. So until we have a guarantee, we're just not willing to put that in there. Though we have been told by the province that we can assume and we can know that that base funding will be coming forward. Just what that number is and the day that we find out, we're just not quite sure. So that is what you're seeing with the Business Enterprise Center.
Okay, so any questions about the Business Enterprise Center or Sydenham campus? Okay, not seeing any hands. Next stop is Grey Roots. And that's page 157.
So thank you so much, Warden. Grey Roots in 2026, we are continuing to build meaningful, inclusive relationships and partnerships where we're prioritizing interactive programming. With the success of the 2025 Lean pilots, staff have now fully operationalized new exhibit, program, and event models to create better access, draw return visits, and enhance deeper engagement. We are anticipating steady visitation resulting from the innovative changes, as well as the introduction of a wild weather traveling exhibit that's coming this year. It is really hard to compete with dinosaurs, but we think that we have found an excellent follow-up exhibit that will have really good community connections as well. And we had a conversation about this at the Ag Advisory Committee this week. On the theme of market, we're also supporting the newly launched website. So we're looking at refresh marketing efforts and greater alignment through tourism to support Grey Roots in a bigger way. The increased costs that you're seeing through this budget, in particular, are the building automation system and program licensing. So some of the program licensing that you will see under subscriptions and publications, those are licensing to allow for free movies in the theater, for the Goose Chase app that does staff engagement as well as visitor engagement. And the reason why we're prioritizing these things is because it enables us to provide offerings without needing additional staff. So these are virtual things that people can participate in so we can create greater offering without asking you for an additional staff person. So that's what has been prioritized in the operating. And for the capital, as with the rest of our projects, all of the actual projects themselves are funded through reserve. All of the levy impact for this year is future reserve contributions. So there are several significant projects for this year. $385,000 for phase 3 of the flat roof replacement. We did not do this last year. We will be doing it this year, and we have to close the museum in order to do it because it's over all of the public gallery spaces. So we're planning that for after the fall season. We also have $7,600 for improvements to the theater. This is funded by reserve and a donation that we received from Thomas Wheeldon. $40,000 for the updated road signage. This is a carryover from 2025. We were not able to get the permits on time to be able to do the demolish and the rebuild. But this is a project that needs to go ahead because the sign is crumbling apart. Huge snowbanks right now protecting us from getting too close to it, but that is something that we look forward to in the spring. And then domestic hot water tanks and domestic hot water heaters are also on the docket for this year for Grey Roots Museum and Archives. So I will end at Grey Roots in case there's any questions.
Okay, and there is definitely another example of countless hours of volunteer service that is helping us operate the way that we are, and for which we are very grateful. So with that, I will look to questions. Questions. It certainly is an exciting gathering place. The way that it's used for community gatherings and then to see families of all ages enjoying all the exhibits as well, and a chance for us to make use of it when we have our Grey County events as well. It's you've been very nimble, very, been able to try to make the space as versatile and flexible as possible, which I think is one of the secret sauces to the success here. We'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Savannah. I see nothing in the capital here regarding additions to Morrison Village. And I know there's been a lot of discussion around that for the last couple of years. Could you maybe just refresh my mind, if no one else's, on where those projects are at? I know there's been a lot of talk about some kind of a church or something of that nature, or other buildings. It's even if you're standing in the right spot, if you're not moving, you're going to get run over. So we need to keep moving ahead with projects like that, additions to Morrison Village. So I'd be interested to hear where we're at with that project, please.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. And through you, we have run the business case internally. Look at me rolling that down. This is what it does to me, Deputy Warden. We have run the business case internally, and at this point, we are still on a 10-year build hiatus. There are dollars in reserve. We are not adding additional dollars to reserve because my ask to you through this budget and through previous and through upcoming budgets is still to keep growing the maintenance reserve contributions, because we're falling behind. And I think a great example of that and the difficulty that we have around dollars to build versus dollars to maintain and operate was the schoolhouse roof report that we brought this year, where even with the plan and the historical accuracy, we had to give that up because we didn't have the support or the funding to be able to do a $60,000 roof. So to think about $1 million church and what that means and additional buildings, we would love to continue to build, but until we have more budget available for maintenance and we have more staffing available to maintain those buildings, and then further lean projects, I would say probably more students and volunteers down the road, it's really hard to think about what would it look like staffing new buildings. For 2026, we're even looking at putting stanchions and plexiglass across some of the buildings so we can get them open, because we can't always get volunteers or staff in there to be able to open them. So trying to create access. So as much as we want to say, let's get this back in the budget, as staff, we're still, you can tell me otherwise, absolutely, anytime. But as staff at this point, we are still enough. We need to just hold and pause and see where we are in a couple of years.
Okay. I don't see any further questions. So you've got another one, community transportation. Page 168.
Thank you so much, Warden. And this is the last one from EDTC. And kind of a weird budget, as we've talked about a couple of times, because it really truly is a placeholder budget until we formally know what is going to come out of the study. So right now, the budget provides the 2026 allocation towards the Tri-County Regional Transit Network. The details of this budget expenditure will be unknown until study is complete and council has had an opportunity to make a decision in the spring of 2026. Both operations of the GTR and the Ghost Transit Service have been extended through a report about a month ago until August 31st, 2026, which ensures continued transit access while the study is being completed and a potential new regional transit system. So the province has approved OTIF funding that supports both services as well as the new community transportation system that could be implemented as early as September 1st, pending study completion and approval. So Grey County has committed $145,000 in the levy to cover the additional costs beyond the provincial grant and partner contributions. This is an increase of $43,700 over 2025, but we also want to note, because it was on those slides last week as well, the assumption when the forecast for 2026 was developed was that community transportation would be out. So it's $101,000 back in from the forecast, although from last year's levy to this year's levy, contribution is $43,700. I will leave it there.
Okay, any questions there? Yes, we're in a holding pattern until we know more. Okay, no hands for that. Thank you very much. And we are at 10:30, so I'm aiming to have us have a break in the next 15 minutes or so, as we started earlier this morning, but we're also going earlier into the later into the day. The lunch is scheduled for approximately 12:30, just to give people that heads up. So we're going to begin in with Human Services, starting on page 171, and I'll call up Director Shaw to begin that. And at some point in time, we will be, Director Shaw will gauge it. And at some point we'll take a pause, do a break, and then come back to your section.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Starting off on page 180 with social services. Social services includes the Ontario Works Department and the Early Learning and Childcare Department. There was a total of $135,800 increase. In Ontario Works, it's a $123,400 increase. The first part of Ontario Works is social assistance. This is the actual funding that our recipients receive. There is a operating requirement of $72,900 compared to $94,700 in 2025. So we do have a decrease in that. And that is related to our funerals for non-social assistance recipients. A year and a half, couple of years ago, we entered into a new process, and that process seems to be working better for us, and also saves us a bit of money. The other part of the budget is the caseload. So our caseload is estimated to be 1,479 for 2026, which is a 6.7% increase. This number comes from the province. The province provides us with what their estimate would be. The 2025 estimate for the average caseload is 1,386. And so far for 2025, we've been at 1,366. So it was an increase over 2024 and close to what the province was predicting. And any of those costs within that budget are 100% funded by the ministry. The Ontario Works portion has a levy contribution of an increase of $145,000. This is the majority of the increase, relates to wage adjustments for staff, including the 2026 cost of living adjustment for union and non-union staff. And we also have inflationary increases to the budget, such as rent increases, insurance, and legal fees. For capital, we have computer placements, and that is all coming from reserve. And I'm happy to answer any questions on Ontario Works.
Any questions there? I do not see any hands.
Okay, moving on to our early learning and childcare. This is starting on page 187. So early learning and childcare, we've had some major changes in the way we've been funded over the last couple of years. When we put together our 2025 budget, it was based on our old way of expenses and revenues. And since then, the funding structure with the CWALC program, so the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, has changed. So when you're looking at this budget, it's a little bit difficult to look and see what the difference is between 26 and 25. At the time of 25, we did not know what our budget allocation was going to be. And at the time of putting our budget together for 26, we don't know our allocation. So we will be back in the new year once we do have all of the information that we need to provide you with a more updated version of this. Right now, we're looking at an increase of $12,400 for the department. I'll just go through and basically what we do fund and what we do provide, what services we do provide. We've gone from 22 pockets of different funding down to 8. So that is one good thing for us. It's going to be a little bit more malleable and a little bit more palliative for us too. So the licensed home child care, that is, we are the agency that oversees the rostered home child care providers and the county. So we also do fee subsidy for our licensed home child care providers also throughout this budget. Our early learning and childcare administration. So we do receive some funding from the province to cover off the administration of this program. Early learning and childcare local priorities. So this provides supports for fee subsidy, special needs resourcing, capacity building, professional learning, and our small waterworks. We used to have individual accounts for all of those. So this does put it all together for us. Our early learning and childcare funding. So this is the funding that we provide to the childcare center on behalf of the parents. So CWELC program has been capped at $25 or $22 a day. So that's what the parent pays. And then we pay the difference between what that cost of operating is and the $22 a day that they receive. So that is calculated on a monthly basis for all of the operators that we support. And those funds come directly from 100% from the province. Early learning and childcare planning and data analysis. We do receive some funding from the province to assess with that. As you can imagine, there's lots of reporting that needs to be done, and we do a lot of data collecting on behalf of the province too. And our early on. We have a number of early on centers in which we support, including our own, and we receive funding for that. 2026, we did have a slight increase in funding. And our Indigenous-led operating budget is $72,200, and that is 100% provincially funded supports for programs for Indigenous families and children. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Well, it's welcome when we see 100% funded by the province. Okay, any questions there? Right, not seeing any. So what's next then? Page 205? We'll go to County Social Initiatives, page 205 and 206.
So county social initiatives, these are initiatives that have come to council and council has made a commitment to fund. We are looking at funding for our low-income families, if there's something that they might require, such as a car seat or baby items, that we have that funding available for them. We support the Bruce Gray Data Information Sharing Collaborative. We provide funding to Beaver Valley Outreach for recreation, homelessness, and good food box. We fund the 211 United Way program. We fund Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy, the Grey Bruce Poverty Task Force, and Safe and Sound. These are operating expenses for Safe and Sound. We provide funding to our Keystone for counseling for schools aged children. This is through the RAP program. And we also provide funding to the YMCA for our recreational programs. 2024, we assisted 191 children through that program. Happy to take some questions.
That is wonderful to hear. Looking around, okay, we've got a question from Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Madam Warden. Just a question around the funding to Keystone. Keystone provides services both in Grey and Bruce County. Does Bruce County provide similar funding to Keystone so those services go across the Bruce County border?
That I do not know. I know the funds that we provide are for Grey County residents, but I'm not sure if Bruce County is providing the same. We did have Mr. Willis here in council a couple of months ago, but I'm unfortunately not aware of that.
Okay, any other questions? go. Looks like we can go to your next section.
Starting off on page 209 for the housing budget. The housing budget requires an increase of 511,100. This increase is $184,000 less than what we had budgeted in the 2026 forecast. Starting off with revenue, we have noticed a little bit of an increase in the rents that we're collecting from our tenants, and so we're increasing that by 62,500 for 2026. We do have federal funding that is decreasing in the amount of 112,900. And this compared to our offset of savings of 72,200 as a debt matured. So we get funding from the federal province to assist us with mortgage payments. In our operating expenditures, we have a total property reoccurring increase of 155,200. The main increases are our salaries and benefits for 110,700, and this is over 32 staff. We have an increase of $69,000 across our various maintenance accounts. And of course, these are labor and material increases, waste management, those sorts of services. We have a inflationary increase of 51,300 for hydro and natural gas and water. We have an increase for supplies for electrical, plumbing, and leased equipment of 23,800. And we have an increase in our interfunctional for 23,800. We have started a transfer to reserve for our insurance deductible. Our insurance deductible is $100,000 now in order for us to be able to afford insurance. So this is just a transfer to reserve so that if we did need that, then we would have it. Taking $100,000 out of your budget in any year, a given year, can have an impact. We had a $13,000 increase to our insurance premium this year, and we have an additional $8,000 in there to include additional costs for meals and conference fees and travel. These are offset by $72,000 decrease in debenture payments, $69,000 decrease in our property taxes due to the residential tax rate being in its final year of adjustment, and $16,000. We did receive a little bit more funding in our COCHI funds, so there were some administration funds.
I think we should pause there before you go on to the supportive housing. Any questions about that long list there? Okay, we still got a few more minutes before you call a break, so why don't you keep working and we'll see where we land. Thank you.
Our 14th Street supportive housing, we have an increase of $9,000 compared to our 2025 budget. And this is just attributable to our rising utility and contracted services costs. Our nonprofit housing, we have an increase of 63,300, and this is for 9 nonprofits that we support. The county provides funding. That funding is determined by indices that are created by the province. So the province would say, administration fees are going up 1.5% across the board, and then we would implement that with our 9 nonprofits. It's also, there is a federal conditional grant that we're receiving, and we're receiving $53,000 less in that this year. And of course, that again is due to assistance with mortgage payments. Onto our provincially funded programs, our Canada Ontario Housing Benefit. This is a benefit that provides subsidy directly to an eligible resident that is on or eligible to be on our social housing waitlist. We provide the application and we send it to the Ministry of Finance. We get $250 for each application that we assist from the Ministry of Finance. And then we have up to a cap in which we can provide for subsidy, and our cap is $173,000 for Great County. The COCHI, or our Canada Ontario Community Housing Initiative, we did receive an increase of $224,000 for that program for the 25-26 funding year. The budget includes rent supplements. We have funding for new housing construction. We have housing with related supports, and so that would be Second Ave Lodge, Meaford Place. That's 24 supportive housing that we provide funding to, and we are allowed to take a 5% administration fee for that to help with staffing. Our Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative, another program from the province. This one's just 100% funded from the province. We did see a decrease in funding of $110,000. And that program is a help to look at, that program provides money for renovations, rent supplements, and again, assists us with our housing with related supports. We have a Indigenous housing support benefit. This is a 100% funded by the province, and it's a flow through to our Mowikwadong Native Friendship Center, and they provide residents with rent supplements and other housing expenses. Our homelessness prevention program, we do not have a number for 2026 budget yet, but we have not seen an increase in the last couple of years to that program, so we've left it the same for 2026. And that funding helps us to prevent and address and reduce homelessness. It provides funding for our emergency services program, our hostel funding through rent supplements, and also case management support and sustainable housing benefit. Our sustainable housing benefit is very well used, and that is for our last month's rent arrears and utility arrears, and that is so that we can prevent homelessness. We have a homelessness reduction innovation fund in which we received funding for a 12-month period for a pilot project for 2 housing first case coordinators. And those, once we house somebody, they will follow that person, assist that person to keep their housing. Our capital, we have a total of $201,000 compared to the 2025 budget. We have an increase of $137,300 for capital projects. And then we also have an increase of $64,600, and that is for our 1% affordable housing fund. We have fallen behind in keeping up with the 1%. It's usually one of the first places that we cut in order to reduce our budget. And so we are looking at an increase of $64,000 for this year to help us catch up. And I'm happy to answer any questions on housing.
Okay, lots of programs there. So we'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Warden. Anne Marie, the changes to the provincial changes to recycling, has that cost the county any dollars in our housing programs?
Yes. We are starting to see a change in some of the places. It all depends on how we are recycling in those buildings. But yes, we will be paying a certain amount per week in most areas now for recycling. And that is included in our budget estimates.
Okay, any other questions on housing? Nope, not seeing any questions. So do you want to do the capital or? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, the capital was there if we had any questions. I just a $134,000 increase. Most of our capital projects, we have reoccurring projects for preventative maintenance, and then we have a 10-year schedule that we follow. In 2026, this is our last year in which we have CMHC funding, and that CMHC funding is paying for 30% of any of the projects that we're completing for 24, 25, and 26.
Okay. Any questions there on the capital? No. Well, there you go. I thought we'd have to call a break in between your section, but very efficient. Thank you. And that is like clockwork. We are coming up to 10:02. So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock and we'll carry on until 12:30. So when we come back, we will be looking at long-term care, pages 257, beginning on page 257 with Director Cornell. Thank you. Okay, all right. Welcome back, Committee of the Whole members. We are going to be carrying on now with we are going to be moving on to long-term care. And it's going to begin on page 257. So we have Director Cornell here at the lectern. So welcome. We'll just stop and pause along the way with the sections that you have.
Thank you very much, and Madam Warden, and good morning, County Council. I am pleased to present the proposed 2026 long-term care department budget for Grey County. I will remind County Council that this budget has been presented to the Long-Term Care Committee of Management on November 12th, and there was a fulsome discussion, and then again at Budget and Finance on November 26th. This budget reflects our ongoing commitment to excellence in care and fiscal responsibility, while continuing to deliver on our Color It Your Way promise, which is an emotion-based model of care that best meets the needs of our residents, families, and staff across all 3 homes. And as the warden indicated, we're looking at page 257 to 346, and I will not be going through every one of those pages. But I will be giving just a high-level overview, and then if there are any questions that haven't been addressed at either of the other 2 times we've discussed this, happy to take those questions. So the 2026 long-term care proposed budget contains operating and capital expenses, including redevelopment of over $91 million. It includes a net levy requirement, which is total operating and capital, of $11,500,600 compared to $10,826,400 in 2025, which is an increase of $674,200. As with last year, the 2027 projection has been developed with assumptions of standard operations, and many assumptions have been used to develop this forecast. These assumptions include increases to cost for utilities, wage rates, and where not currently known, benefits, etc. The budget includes $38.6 million in expenses for the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace and is funded by $9.3 million in provincial funding, $39.4 million construction loan, and supported by a $2.56 million levy. The levy remains the same compared with the 2025 budget. As with other budgets that receive provincial funding, it can be difficult to estimate the future levels of funding that will be received. For example, the case mix index and changes to ministry guidelines. The additional revenue and expenses to transition Rockwood Terrace from 100 beds to 128 beds have been included, as the occupancy date of the new home is anticipated for 2027. And we had some discussion about that on day 1 of budget discussions a week ago. So I'll just highlight a little bit about the drivers and the impacts. So budget impacts related to funding, still on page 257, is a list of the funding revenue sources. So the funding and revenue sources come from Ministry of Long-Term Care, which includes level of care-based funding, global level of care, and case mix index, the resident co-payment, other incomes such as rentals, etc., and then Grey County taxation. There's a little bit more information about the level of care base funding. So historically, the homes receive an increase in base funding from the Ministry of Long-Term Care each year, and it's applied directly to each of the 4 funding envelopes: nursing and personal care, program and support services, raw food, and other accommodation. A 1.5% funding increase for global level of care has been budgeted effective April 1st, and this matches the percentage and timing of the 2025 funding increase. And this is a projection. We are estimating it based on a look back and what has been received over the years. Case mix index, in addition to base funding, the homes receive resident acuity or care needs funding, which is referred to as the case mix index. The higher the case mix index, the higher the acuity of the resident and the more nursing and personal care funding that the home may receive. Despite rising acuity in all long-term care homes in Ontario, the CMI system allocates the acuity funding envelope, but does not change the size of the funding envelope. So the pie is the same pie, It's just sliced differently depending on the care ratios of the data that's received across the province. We have changed our approach to predicting or projecting the CMI for the proposed budget. And we have opted to keep the CMI rate as the same as the 2025 budget. And we've done that based on a historical look back of what our projections were, what we actually received. And this is the most consistent and most appropriate approach, we believe. The resident co-payment is the portion that the resident pays towards their stay and their care. And there on page 258, there's some information about that increase and how that works. Budget impacts and expenditures at the bottom of 258. Some of the main drivers are around salaries and benefits. And I'll remind council that wages and benefits account for over 84% of the 2026 budget. We had some preliminary discussions on day one about staffing numbers, and the long-term care division has 631 team members, approximately 60 of which are non-union. There's a little bit of information about the non-union salary and compensation review and how that has played out in long-term care. And then the long-term care staffing increase supplement. And so this is the final year of the infusion of funds for direct care hours, which is also called the long-term care staffing increase supplement. Direct care is defined as hands-on care provided to residents that includes, but not limited to, assessments, feeding, bathing, toileting, lifting, moving residents, therapeutic treatments, medication administration, activities of daily living support. The budget presents a maintenance of the current level of direct care hours, which is 3 hours and 53 minutes per resident per day, and does not request an increase in that time for the proposed budget. If we were to propose an increase in direct care hours, it would have a direct impact on the levy. On page 260, 260 is kind of the description about nutritional support, formerly called raw food. So we're improving our nomenclature, so that's good. So nutritional support, the Ministry of Long-Term Care provides $13.44 per resident per day for nutritional support. This budget has been prepared under the assumption that funding is unchanged from 2025 as an increase was received in year. In 2025, the funding envelope operated with a 68 cents per diem levy requirement. In 2026, there's no proposed increase to that county per diem, and that budgeted levy requirement for nutritional support enhancement is $78,400 across the 3 homes. And those funds are used to support purchasing local beef, for example, produce that is in season that we get locally. So corn on the cob, strawberries, that kind of thing. Long-term care administration on page 262. This is just an overview of this department.
Yes, that's right. So I think that's a good, let's stop here and collect questions because we don't have to chase up too far up into pages if people have questions from further back. Takes a while to scroll up and down. So at this point in time, do you have any questions on what's been presented so far? We'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden. Morning, Jen. Thanks for your continued efforts in long-term care. I know we had this discussion at our committee of management, but just for council's benefit, there was a question asked in regards to the raw food. All of us knowing how groceries have went up and we're able to maintain the status quo at 68 cents per diem per day. You are confident that we can continue to provide the wonderful meals that we do right now without an increase in that department?
Thank you, Councillor Mackey, and through you, Warden Matrosovs. Good question, and we did have some good discussion about that at Long-Term Care Committee of Management. So I am confident that the nutrition managers and the leaders in the home, in partnership with Marcus and Karen from finance, who give us some great support, have some really established structures in place to monitor the purchasing and preparation of food. And so we work with a contracted service provider that helps us ensure that our menus meet all of the legislative requirements, are what we meet with the Residents' Council to make sure that the meals that we prepare are what they want to eat and that they don't have any concerns. We did get an increase in nutritional support in year from the Ministry of Long-Term Care. Unfortunately, what often happens is the increase comes and then the prices go up. And I think we all are seeing that. So we monitor it really closely, but we have been successful in staying on budget. And the levy contribution of that $78,000 does help support us in being able to buy fresh produce and local produce. So we're hopeful that those mechanisms we have in place will help us continue to be on budget.
Okay, any other questions so far? We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you. Good morning, and through you. With regard to the 1.5% increase in staffing supplement, that funding coming directly from the province, do they not follow the annual cost of living increase? We're increasing salaries by 2%, but we're not keeping pace. Just, they have already answered my question, but.
Thank you. And through you, Warden, no. So this is something that we do advocate when we have any opportunity. So it's something that is worrisome to the sector. So there'll be legislative requirement to have on staff a new position. So for example, the IPAC manager, or even going back almost 20 years, the RIE coordinator, which is linked with CMI and documentation. It's not the little bottle under in the drawer, although sometimes I think they might prefer that. But there's funding to support that. And then unfortunately, the base funding doesn't keep up with the cost of living, the increases to the requirements of the role, until eventually it becomes the operator's responsibility or funding it, and it's only partially being funded. Having said that, Marcus, was it 24 that was a 6.8%? So in 2024, there was an unprecedented 6.6% increase in the level of care funding. So there was an infusion and a recognition from the province that many things had lagged behind. Operators were really struggling following the pandemic. And so there was this very significant increase in funding. We are being conservative at budgeting 1.5% because we can't be certain that it will be more than that. Historically, it's around 1.5%, but doesn't keep up with the cost of living increases. And we do spend a great deal of time advocating for that being a challenge in sustaining operations.
Thank you for that. And if I recall from past discussions, we subsidize the beds to the tune of, I think we're at about $22,000 a bed, and that is taxpayer funded.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. Yes, so it's an average of 22, well, it's between 20 and 23, 20. Okay, depending on the home. So average is about $25,000 per bed. as an enhancement that the levy does support, the tax dollars do support.
Okay, any other questions here? Not online. All right, so I don't know how you want to break out the remainder, but feel free to pause when you think that there's a logical conclusion.
Thank you. There's no pausing. I'm steamrolling ahead. Okay, I will pause. I'm almost done, actually, I think. So finally, I wanted to just touch on the long-term care administration operating budget. And this department funds the Director of Long-Term Care Office, which includes myself, clinical specialist, executive assistant, admin assistant, student placement coordinator, which is funded through the PrEP LTC program, and the provincially mandated role of infection control managers. The cost of this department is funded by the 3 homes. And I just wanted to highlight this again. This is kind of the operating team that supports the 650 team members that work in the division, 3 sites, 319 residents, and so on. The remaining pages get very much into detail that are home specific. I was not planning on going into each home unless there was some specific questions and we could go there. So from my perspective, in summary, this budget is designed to maintain current service levels, address financial pressures, and invest strategically in our homes and our staff. But I am here, and Marcus is here to provide support for if there's any specific questions to the rest of the details.
Okay, thank you. And yes, we've all had that material to digest, plus we have heard from it from both the Long-Term Care Committee as well as earlier discussions. So we've had a good walkthrough of that already, but just in case there are any specific questions, people might have noted something, want to ask about a particular home and something on a budget line, if you could begin by explaining the page number so that staff can catch up to it and be able to respond. So we'll go to Councillor Mackey first.
Thank you, Warden. Jen, when the time comes, and I know there needs to be further discussion and decisions made by council, but right now, the decommissioning of the Rockwood Terrace, is there anything in the budget for the decommissioning? I'm not sure if decommissioning is the right term, but when residents are moved out and not knowing what a future decision on that building will be, is there money in the budget to shutter that program?
Thank you. And through you, Warden Matrosovs, kind of a yes and. So there are funds built in to the operating budget to support the maintenance of existing Rockwood during the transition. And that first winter, we're moving January-ish is the proposed date. Whether it's January, February, there will need to be snow removal at both sites. There will need to be heat and hydro, both sites. There'll need to be security at the existing site. So that has all been taken into consideration and is built into the proposed operating budget. Deputy CAO Lobley and myself are actively working on a report to bring to Long-Term Care Committee of Management in the new year for some discussion about making plans and what that looks like for the existing Rockwood Terrace and Grey Gables.
Okay, other questions on anything with the long-term care budget lines? Not seeing any further hands go up here nor online. There you go. Thank you very much, Director Cornell. All right. So Director McNabb, if you'd like to come forward. And your section will begin on page 347. So if everyone could just scroll down to 347. And again, if you think that there's a logical spot to stop for questions, we'll do that. And we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll see how I roll here. So hopefully with some steam. I just want to start by saying thanks to the finance staff and especially Laura for all her work to get us to where we are today. So for paramedic services, the 2026 services budget includes a net departmental requirement total operating capital of $11,254,700 compared to $9,934,600 in 2025, an increase of $1,320,100. This is the original amount before any adjustment that has taken place through the budget process so far. This increase is $573,000 more than the amount included in the 2025 budget for the 2026 forecast. So for the operating budget reflects a $1,169,500 increase as compared to 2025. The Ministry of Health provides current year funding based upon 50% of the previous year's operating budget adjusted for Public Sector Accounting Board eligible expenditures, such as amortization, future benefit, and future WSIB costs without an inflationary adjustment. We lost that inflationary adjustment in 2019. The 2026 grant amount of $11,510,700 has been calculated using the assumption that this funding will not change, and that has been consistent for a number of years. It's worth noting that the Ministry of Health funding model provides the 50% of the prior year's budgeted operating costs. In short, the budget set in 2026 will determine the maximum amount of grant that can be received in 2027. Staff has taken a prudent approach to the assumptions for the 2026 and 2027 operating budget to try to ensure that the budget is set at a rate that enables us to recoup 50% of the 2026 actual operating costs. The grant figure excludes provincial funding provided by Ontario Health West and also the Ministry of Long-Term Care for the Community Paramedicine Program and supportive outreach services. It also excludes funding for the Offload Nurse Program and the Emergency Treatment Fund. For our major budget drivers, salaries and benefits, excluding the service review enhancement, salaries and benefits have increased $1,413,300 as compared to the 2025 budget. Salaries and benefits represent 82.2% of the total operating budget expenditures. This is primarily due to cost of living adjustments, collective agreement increases, the float duty supervisor position, which is a new position, and increased benefit rates. Fleet repairs, the vehicle operation budget shows an increase of $60,600 as a result of increased fleet repair and maintenance costs as a result of an aging ambulance fleet with delays experienced as a result of an aging fleet with delays experienced in new vehicle replacement delivery. We've been ordering vehicles 2 years ahead, and I believe next year we will get that corrected. Right now, we're expecting one this month and 7 more by the end of April next year. So that'll be good to have them in. And then with our new vendor, hopefully there'll be even one before the end of next year. So they'll hopefully correct a lot of our fleet issues. This assumes, this is a correction. It says 14.5%, but it's a 7.1% increase in insurance premiums and $26,200 in increase in fleet maintenance costs. For medical supplies, paramedic services continues to see significant increases in the price of medical supplies and medications. This has been happening since the beginning of COVID. Also, yearly increases in call volumes contribute to the usage of medical supplies and medications. The 2026 budget for medical supplies has increased $19,000 based upon 2025 actual costs. The 2026 budget for medications was increased by $10,500. Can we stop there?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to look to make sure that we're grouping things. All right, let's pause here then, and we'll go to a question from Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Ward Mashtoff. A question that doesn't really reflect today, but with onboarding 8 ambulances in 1 year, are staff looking at adjustments to the asset management? Because theoretically then we're going to have 8 offboarding and re-unloading this, like, rather than having them spaced out over a few years, which was the original goal. But unfortunately, given supply chain issues, we got lumped into this. So is there an effect happening in terms of asset management and the reserve because of onboarding so many in 1 year?
Yeah, we do talk about that. That will impact when we buy them. There'll be years where we don't buy them, and there'll be a year where we buy a large number. Typically, we keep the vehicles for 6 years. That's the standard. They have, generally they would have 300,000 kilometers, but right now some are in the 400,000 and 500,000 kilometer. But yeah, we have talked about that. There will be a year, 6 years from now, that we'll buy ambulances.
Okay. Anything else? All right, don't see any further questions. Go ahead. Finish it off.
In just regards to that, with our capital planning, we will be putting the funds away for to meet those needs in those years that we require them.
Thank you, Ward Metrosoft, and to you, Kevin. I think that was kind of my point. Like, typically, council sits here and we see reserves, and we see the reserves becoming pretty healthy. And this is a situation where 5 years, that reserve is going to look really big. And council of the day, we want to make sure that council of the day realizes that it's year 6 when it's going to suddenly be depleted significantly. And that becomes a challenge as we sit here because of what we're facing. That supply chain made a bottleneck. That makes it a hard sell sometimes to a council of the future to say, we realize there's 9 million sitting here and it looks like a lot of money, but next year we're spending 11 million on all these ambulances, like that kind of conversation. That's just why I brought up and popped in my head.
Yeah, and we do talk also that it's not ideal that we have ambulances with this old and that high a mileage, but every year that pushes forward, it actually pushes a year because we go 6 years from the date of receipt. So even though we're seeing funding required on the operating side for maintenance and repair, that's pushing the capital price forward as well. But again, it's not ideal to have these long delays and increased kilometers. So service enhancements based on projections developed during the paramedic services comprehensive deployment review in 2022 and 2023. Staff created a service enhancement plan over 11 years from 2024 to 2034 to ensure Grey County can maintain call response times. The original plan presented to council included 8 new 12-hour shifts, 2 supervisors, a rebuild of the Durham base to include logistics and administration, and 5 new base locations over a 10-year period. During the 2024 budget process, this plan was reduced by approximately 20%. The current plan consists of 6 12-hour shifts operating 7 days a week, 1 weekend upstaff, 1 supervisor, 7 additional ambulances into our fleet, and 4 bases now in Feversham, Ayton, Thornbury, and Cobble Beach. Over the last 2 years, we have added 3 12-hour shifts, 1 supervisor, 5 additional ambulances into the fleet, and the Durham base has been completed. Based on current information and assumptions, staff estimate that a 431,100 annual levy increase is required over the next 9 years. The first year of the plan raised $372,500 of levy in 2024, then increased to $410,000 in 2025. This amount has been increased to reflect the changes in assumptions and timing of enhancements. So that includes the new prices of the bases and also staffing costs. In 2026, we're requesting a comprehensive deployment review update. The 2026 budget includes an update to the comprehensive deployment review to ensure service strategies meet needs through 2033. Using ORH's AMSIM model, the review will analyze updated call demand, population growth, recent upstaffing impacts, and nighttime demand trends to validate original recommendations and guide decisions on base locations, vehicle deployment, and shift timing. The professional and consulting fees budget reflects an increase of $66,200 for this work, funded through $10,200 in savings from other budget lines and the remainder from reserve. Community paramedicine. The 2026 budget for community paramedicine for long-term care includes $1,500,000 of funding from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and $47,900 of funding from Ontario Health West, totaling $1,547,900 of provincial grant. This budget The total budget expenditures for this program are $1,623,400, leaving $75,500 to be funded from Grey County levy. This program has 3 community paramedics working 7 days a week as a paramedic supervisor and admin staff. And we see approximately 700 patients in this program. Let me take a break before we go to capital.
Sure. Any questions? We'll go to Councillor Eccles.
Thank you. And Kevin, we're spending millions on building new bases so we can meet these standards of time response. My fear is with the advance of technology and the advancement of technology and the advancement of requirements for paramedics delivering healthcare. How are we capable of meeting what's coming? Do we have the ability to pay for what is going to happen coming forward? We're building new bases so we can meet times. And as technology and as more downloading comes onto the paramedic service from healthcare, how many more do you foresee that we're going to have to build, that we're going to have to put money away to supply that care that's needed for our community? Do you have a crystal ball?
No, I don't have a crystal ball, but kind of break it up into 2 sections. I think one about response time as the county continues to grow. I would say, you know, the base locations that we picked were base locations that ORH picked as places that we should put bases if we were going to enhance response time. So I was thinking we picked to maintain and with some improvement on response times. So I feel that, but it's setting us up, even though we're talking about a 10-year plan, these bases could be around for 40 or 50 years. I think it's setting us in good stead as a physical base location for to improve and beyond these 10 years. As far as the treatments go, the treatments that we institute in 911 are all evidence-based treatments that we bring forward. They typically don't charge a lot of money for them, like for the medication therapy and stuff like that. It's training, but we work that into our CME cycles. So there are things that come up, like the auto pulse CPR devices. That's something new, but most of the directives that we do are around medications and smaller medical devices. Is that what you're?
Kind of, but we're now delivering paramedicine. We're delivering SOS. Ambulance is not picking up a patient and getting them to the hospital anymore. It's almost by osmosis. We, the county, the property taxpayers, are starting to deliver more and more and more healthcare continuously and paying for it. You know, we've watched the growth of paramedicine here has been remarkable, and it delivers quite well. I'm happy with that. But is it what we are as being downloaded? Are we capable of continuing to meet those high standards without increased funding from the province? From where the funding should come from is income, not property tax. And I'm fearful of how far we're going to go by this download and by the osmosis of doing it because nobody else wants to do it, or the province is abdicating their delivery of healthcare. That's how much further can we go? And that's, I guess, what my concern is.
For these additional programs like SOS and community paramedicine, we continue to advocate for 100% funding. That they meet that 100% funding to maintain them. The Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care has increased our grant by $500,000 to help us meet that. The one thing that is lacking still, and I think there's more work to do, is they don't build in inflationary increases. So even though we catch up, then the next year we're about behind. So I think that's one area that, you know, if we were to advocate, that would be where we'd want to be, is for inflationary increases. But our goal is to implement programs that, you know, for this type of work to get the 100% funding.
Okay, I'll just look around the room. And I don't see any further hands up there. Anything further than ready to move on?
The 2026 capital budget has a levy impact totaling $349,200, an increase of $150,600 from 2025. 2026 budget includes the completion of the construction of the new Feversham base, in addition to the base debenture. This budget sees the addition of the new Dundalk base as the township of Southgate is expanding their fire service, and they need the space for their new fire pumper. As a part of the 2026 budget process, the Ayton base has also been proposed to be moved to the 2027 budget year. Vehicle and equipment purchases are funded through the equipment reserve. Capital purchases for 2026 for the existing fleet are as follows. There's 9 ambulances. 7 of those are the ones that will be coming in that are already on order. And then there'll be 2 more ordered for the regular replacement cycle in 2026. 1 emergency response vehicle, 5 power load stretchers. And this is a year where a large number of our stair chairs are changed over. They're a 10-year replacement. So there'll be 14 of those. This year sees a pause in capital purchases required to support the service delivery enhancements until 2027. 2023 capital budget includes annual transfers to reserve of $163,500 for the following: $34,800 to the building repairs and maintenance reserve, $128,700 to fund the replacement of the existing capital based upon the asset's life cycle. The capital budget includes $90,000 rolled forward from 2025 to extend the useful life of the Owen Sound roof, and also a $20,000 kitchenette for the Chatsworth base. Both projects are funded by the Paramedics Services BCA Reserve.
Okay, any questions there? Nope, not seeing any questions. Thank you very much. All right, so next did you CEO, or are you heading to the lectern before we go into the, okay, all right. So the CIO is going to walk us through the next. At this point in time, we are going to be looking at a recap and visiting items that were left over from December 5th. And we'll watch the clock in terms of our lunch, and because we do have motions outstanding that we'll have to visit as well. Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Warden Matrosov. So committee may recall that at the last meeting, council deferred a motion regarding social pinpoint to remove this item from the 2026 budget. Staff discussed this further, and we don't have any further information at this time regarding this project beyond what was presented at the last budget meeting. Staff will be more than happy to bring forward a more detailed staff report later in 2026 regarding this initiative and the benefits that we think this would achieve in increasing community engagement around various projects and initiatives. At that time, we can even try to bring forward a demo just to demonstrate some of the functions, features and functions of that platform. Based on this, staff would recommend council just proceeding with voting on the motion that was deferred. And based on that outcome, again, we'd be happy to bring back, if the motion gets supported, to remove it from this year's budget. We would be happy to bring back a staff report with further information next year with respect to that particular proposal.
Okay, so with no new information, is there any further question on that? Yes, Councillor Nielsen.
Just for clarity, Warden Matrosov, that motion is now on the table to be discussed? Or is it open to be discussed?
Yes, this would be the right time for us to go into discussion on this particular topic. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Warden Matrosov. I did get a chance to talk to Grey Highland staff around the social pinpoint, and I got a few good points of feedback. Staff do find that the program itself makes it very easy to get specific progress reports out to the public for public engagement, that it allows for data collection on items. Where it hasn't surfaced is a significant uptake in responses from the community. So the challenge is the program itself has significant merits and is a benefit. It is how do we still get the community to engage with that platform? Once residents do engage the platform, they'll find it easier to find the information they're looking for. It does help to identify projects and scope your search rather than trying to look at like the generic municipal page. But I wanted to share that with all of County Council because I did talk to the Greyhound staff. From our staff perspective in Grey Highlands, they do see a benefit to the program in that ability. Just how the further question is, how do you get residents to engage with it?
Okay, thank you. That's appreciated. Looking into that in terms of an example about what's working. Okay, other questions then? This is, Madam Clerk, did we move a motion last time so this was tabled? We've already had it moved and second. Okay, so it was Councillor Gregg and Councillor Mackey that had previously moved that the social pinpoint item be removed from the 2026 budget. So that's what we're back to discussing. And did I see your hand, Councillor Gregg? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you're quite correct, Councillor Nielsen. It reminds me of zoning bylaw changes. 98% of the community doesn't care that you undertake a zoning bylaw update until something happens next door to them. And that just frankly, you can't blame the public. I mean, I think fundamentally it's on councillors, whether it's an apple festival in Meaford or a park opening in Georgian Bluffs. I think that is fundamentally the best place of engagement where it has to start, because the outreach, I think, is always going to be that way. It just circles back to the zoning bylaw. Zoning changes, they don't matter to most people. They're not going to go to any of 100 public meetings that you could put on. But they're certainly going to complain when something happens that we didn't foresee coming when we create the policy. So thanks for your comments.
Okay, any other discussion then on this item before I call the vote? Any other discussion? Yes, Councillor Eccles.
So can somebody read me the motion that's supposed to be on the floor here? Moved. That's what it is. So it was deferred from December the 5th, just for procedure. Have we got it back onto the table yet? Yeah, everybody agrees with that. Fine, I'll be. Just on procedure, if it was deferred, does it not have to be moved to bring it back on today, or was it deferred to today's meeting? So this has got it on, just procedural. Thank you. Okay,
Okay, there you go. Yes, it was deferred from the previous part one of our budget discussions to part two. Essentially, last Friday and today are like one meeting together. So we stopped that conversation. We deferred it to make the final vote and final discussion and vote today. So that's why we have it in front of us, just the way that it was moved. And this is like picking up from the conversation that we had at that point in time. So thank you. Always good to make sure that we're clear on where we are, especially because we've had it spread out over 2 days. Is there any further discussion then on the motion that's on the floor? We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you. And through you, what is the alternative to social pinpoint? Just remaining with the status quo, continuing with how we engage with residents today? Is there the prospect of a system failure that we're looking for a replacement software? Just kind of wanting to understand what the importance of the $30,000 will mean if we don't move forward with something.
Through you, Warden, and thank you for that question. I might lean on Communications Manager Rob Hatton a little bit on this as well. Primarily be, if this motion passes, it'd be status quo. We would obviously look for opportunities to always enhance our community engagement with various projects and initiatives. I think the intent with this one is that over time, we're hoping that between the county and most of our member municipalities being on a similar platform, that there's a number of joint projects and initiatives that we're working on together collaboratively, that we can have a consistent message and communications format and platform to do that community engagement. Right now, we all have individual platforms or different apps and other things that we currently utilize. This would provide some consistency in terms of a regional collaborative way to engage with the community that hopefully would drive some further connections back in terms of responses to whatever we're engaging on. So that was the intent. So without that, we will of course still look for those opportunities to work together, collaborate, engage with our municipal partners in order to make sure that we're hearing the voices of the community so that we can bring that information back to our respective councils to help with decisions.
Thank you. And to that point, we know Grey Highlands already engages Social Pinpoint and pays a fee for that service. If I recall the conversation, our $30,000 for a county program would allow for savings for the lower tier municipalities should they wish to sign up. So the cost benefit of analysis, you know, we might actually, if 8 other municipalities sign on, we might actually save $30,000 overall.
Through you, Warden, I'd like to invite Communications Manager Rob Hatton to help respond to that.
Thank you, Randy. Yes, if all municipalities did get on with a regional purchase for this, for building a regional platform, there would be more than $30,000 in savings across the county. But given that a number of municipalities don't currently have the platform at all, that would be additional funding happening at those municipalities that are not on that platform or a similar platform that would be migrating. And I thought I had one more point, but it somehow fell out of my head from there to here. So yeah, there would be a reduced rate, and that's what it was. The reduction works out to, I don't have the exact math, but it's about 15% off of what the base cost is, maybe a little bit more or less. It's all based on population size of the municipality.
Okay, so I have 2 hands up over here, so we'll begin with Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, and through you, Warden Matrosovs. The question I had is probably the same question that Easteria has. What is the cost like to a municipality? We're establishing a new website in 2026, and I'm just starting to see some figures now. So my question is, if we're going to invest in this, which I think our staff are interested in, what's that going to add to my budget in 2026? Do you have a figure for that?
Yeah, through you, Warden. Based on earlier estimates provided by Social Pinpoint in the Eura municipality, the size of Meaford would be looking at around 8,500 is around what the estimated price was at that time. But again, that quote will no longer be completely accurate, so you'd have to go to requote at this point because it is expired, but it would be in that range.
Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs. And just further to Councillor Kentner's question, yes, we have spoken with our CIO, and I know Meaford is definitely interested in pursuing this. It was my impression last Friday that we were going to see a demo before we had to make decision on this. So I'm just wondering, Randy mentioned a demo, when we might have the opportunity to view that and what the requirement then is in relationship to making a decision on Social Pinpoint today.
Okay, so I'll come back to staff.
Through you, Warden. And when it was noted that we could potentially bring back a demo, we'd have to coordinate that obviously with the provider in order to schedule that. There just wasn't enough time to coordinate that and bring that back as a demo for this meeting. Also, you know, not taking away from the overall budget discussion for corporately as well. We thought the best time would be to bring that back through a future staff report and do a demo at that time and coordinate it that way. So that's the hope, that's the plan, regardless of whatever outcome this vote on this motion today. We'd be happy to still do that and bring back a staff report and demonstration so that council can see the features and functions that the platform could provide.
Okay, so should this motion fail and it not be included in the 2026 budget, would you need direction from staff in order to be able to execute a report, or would you just simply put that into the work plan that you will come back for a consideration in the next budget year?
Through you, Warden. Yeah, either way, the outcome, we're happy to bring back a staff report and show council what the capabilities would be with social pinpoint, whether this motion is supported today and removed from the 2026 budget, we can still bring back that staff report and provide that information. If this doesn't support today, we can still bring back that demonstration just so that council's familiar with the capabilities of the platform.
Okay, so does that help? Okay, so any other questions? Yes, Councillor DeBreen.
Does staff, through you, do staff want direction if we remove from the 2026 budget and that direct staff to bring back a report and demonstration? Or because I think we're all very interested, and I know that our lower tiers would be very interested in perhaps, you know, having one of those sessions where they might be able to view it as well. But also I'm thinking, does this tie in with the economic development countywide partnership collaboration piece that, you know, our lower tiers are working with the county on collaborating on the various economic development initiatives? Would this help serve the lower tier municipalities through the county? And that might be something that could be looked at when it comes back as part of that report. But my question through you is, do we want to add that piece to the motion so that staff have direction to bring it back?
Okay, well, I've heard from the clerk and from the CAO that we don't require a motion for them to go ahead and proceed with that because it is in the work plan. It would become part of the work of the 2027 budget. So we would be able to further explore that, find the best way, even if the presentation is done at a county council meeting, and then the recording of that could be then viewed by the member municipalities to check it out. I don't know. So we'll try to make sure that is as useful as possible, having a demonstration as well, because it seems like that would be probably ease your burden of having to write everything into a report to be able to demonstrate how it's capable. I think that would help your work. Okay, so with that, we have not yet voted on this motion, but I don't see any further hands up at this point in time. So I will call the question that the social pinpoint item be removed from the 2026 budget. All those in favor of removing? Okay, and Madam Clerk, that is passed. Okay, thank you very much. So that takes care of the one. And are we going to move to the clerk now? Madam Clerk is going to come to the lectern and talk about the question of council conferences and the potential reduction back down to 1 instead of 2 per year.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Warden, following last week's budget meeting, staff went back to look at what potential reduction in the council operating budget could be by reducing conferences for county councillors from 2 conferences to 1 conference. So that number that we put together is $35,000. That would include costs related to travel and mileage costs to and from the conference, accommodations, your conference registration, food per diem, and a conference per diem as well. So that $35,000 would come from a couple different lines in the council operating budget, but that's the total that we would expect to see reduced if councillors attended 1 conference in 2026.
Okay, and the translation of what percentage reduction, what fraction of a percent that would be? I know it's hard to work in numbers that small, but just so we have all the information. Go ahead, CAO.
Through you, Warden, that results in about a 0.04% reduction.
Okay, so with that, Madam Clerk, we didn't actually have a motion on that, did we? Okay, all right, so she's already here, she's already introduced it. I'll just put it out then if there are questions or comments that you'd like to put before we head to a motion. Usually we'd have a motion on the floor, but because she's already presented the information, let's finish this exchange before we look for a motion. Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And we sort of went through this motion in 2024, and then we went back to 2025 and back to 2. I guess history repeats itself, but so I guess on that budget line of all county councillors, how many take up 2 conferences?
I would have to go back and review that. It's not all of you, not everyone does attend to. So we did in that $35,000, it's only based on a reduction of, I think, 3 or 4 counselors. Sorry, it's based on 14 counselors attending 1 as opposed to the full 17, because if we said all 17 were only attending 1, we in all likelihood be shorting the county council in 2026 because not everyone takes 2 conferences.
So it's sort of based on averages of how much uptake there is, and by putting it in, it's sort of a guess. So I guess I'll just talk to being around here since 2010. I mean, a good part of your conferences, so Roma and AMO are more or less your 6 month apart conferences where you probably have delegations, you meet with ministries and stuff like that. And probably, I would say, probably my practice has been generally, I would say that Roma and AMO is probably through the county. And then your lower tier could be Good Roads, FCM, OSIM, and there's a lot multiple lists of depending on what committees you're on and stuff like that. So I'll just say it. I think it should stay just because of your work that we do around this table. If it's 0.04%, like what are we really achieving? And if you want to go and you don't want to charge, don't charge. But I mean, it's part of our job. So again, I think the Roma and AMO part is sort of your key ones, because every time with 6 months apart, you have we have the Bear Pit, you have new announcements from your provincial government. So those are 2 of your core. But again, I certainly suggest that we keep it in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus Conference, that was, I don't know, I know we had good representation there from Grey County, but I'm not sure how many were using their allocation from the town versus the municipality versus the county. But as Councillor McQueen said, that after the big 2, there are a number of opportunities that qualify for that conference. Okay, other discussion then? I'm not seeing hands, so I'm going to ask then for somebody to put forth a motion. If there is, at the moment, Madam Clerk, if we don't do any further motion, it stays at the 2 conferences unless somebody puts a motion to reduce it down to 1. So I'll put it out there. Councillor Gregg.
Well, I'll put that motion forward that it go to 2-1. It's an election year. I understand that some might have a particularly raised interest in going to AMO, but it is right preceding the election. I think the opportunity for this council, probably rightfully, never are 18 of us attending Roma, and never are 18 of us attending AMO. And if we were, I would seriously question the value of 18 of us attending both of those conferences. I think in a year where we're still at positive 5% in terms of the actual levy increase, I don't evaluate budgets on a 0.01 or a 0.09% component of what the actual budget is. I don't fundamentally agree with that because opposite to that is everyone has a good idea to fund something in a budget, and it's only a cup of coffee a week. It's only a cup of coffee a month. Everyone makes that same argument and tries to rationalize spending in the same way. So I don't look to rationalize removing something from a budget on the same principle. So I think the opportunity is there. We still have the opportunities to attend. I've spoken with on this at the last meeting, so I won't berate it. We can just go to a vote. I'll place the motion out there that there's opportunity for us to reduce the budget this year by attending only one conference as councillors on behalf of the county.
Okay, well, before we can get into discussion, I'm going to need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Mackey. Okay, Madam Clerk, can you make sure that that's up on the screen for us? Okay, while that's coming up on the screen, we're now open for discussion. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Machusov. This motion got brought forward and was defeated at the Budget and Finance Committee level too. I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Gregg, in terms of your rationale and your view of how to review the budget. But a big part of that is also value in the budget. I do agree with Councillor McQueen that the value to county council members in attending conferences, and it doesn't just have to be your AMO or your Roma. There are 6 or 7 conferences across the year that bring value, and it's not just in the attendance and the camaraderie among your colleagues. It's the ability to meet with ministers. It's the ability to learn from colleagues. It's the ability to interact and continue to promote Grey County on a larger platform. So when we look at the warden who has the ability to attend, I believe it's every major conference across the year, that is part of the job to promote the county. County councillors can be there to support the warden in that work. County councillor can be there to support growth and attraction and understanding of what Grey is doing. Being there to promote how innovative Grey County is being when it comes to the SOS program, to have conversations with my members from Kingston and discussing the significant positive feedbacks we're getting in our SOS program, is seeing positive responses in other areas of Ontario as we share those stories. So there is great value to the conference line item. And to me, I agree. You shouldn't look at it as how much money are you saving? What percentage? Doesn't matter. It's what value it brings. To me, this line item brings significant value to Grey County.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? We'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I know here in Grey County, we tend to think that we have all the answers. I'm biased. But by only going to one conference a year, the risk is becoming rather parochial in your outlook. If I had my druthers, councillors would be required to attend 2, maybe even 3 conferences a year, because we don't have all the answers. It's, as Councillor Nielsen and Councillor McQueen indicated, it's part of our job to make sure that we interact with other councillors from other parts of the province, and indeed other parts of the country, depending on the conference you're going to. We don't have all the answers, nor does anybody, but collaboratively, I think we can come up with some answers to some of the things that do face us. So I'm going to be voting. I can't support the removing of the one conference. I I do think that it's easy to portray any spending by councillors or indeed politicians. That's an easy, almost cynical thing to do in an election year. As a new councillor, it's very valuable to be able to go to events like that and speak to other councillors, other staff that have some tenure. Some of us have more than others, but it's a valuable part of going. We're in the people business, and people relationships are important. So if I see something going on in Oxford County, I can call up Marcus and say, Marcus, what the heck are you talking about down there, right? But if I didn't go to conferences or other events, you don't have the chance to make those relationships and make those contacts. So I think it's very important. I'm not going to advocate that we make it mandatory to go to 2 or 3 conferences, but I do feel strongly that councillors do need to go to those events throughout the course of the year to build those relationships and to see what's going on across the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to Councillor Body next and then to Councillor Dobreen after that.
Maybe it's a number of conferences we could go to that we do go to. Grey County led years ago to write a letter to tell Ogra and Roma to have one conference together. Those conferences were really good because you got information from both sides. Once they separated, I found them thin to go to, but maybe what we should be doing is passing a motion to ask them to put their conferences together, and that would cut down on some of our costs.
Okay, thank you. I believe the clerk will probably advise on when that, I think that might need to be a notice motion or something separately from the actual budget discussion, although I do see the relevance to the discussion that we have at the table here. We're going to go to Councillor Dobreen next.
Thank you, Warden, and through you. With regard to Ogra and Roma, irreconcilable differences in the divorce, we have a representative on the Roma caucus, Roma board across the horseshoe, and we have a representative at the Ogra board. They speak to each other here, but maybe not at the other tables. But that's not why I raised my hand, but thank you. I just want to speak to, and not from a purely selfish position, this county council appointed myself to the county caucus of the AMO board, which holds its board meetings at AMO, that annual board meeting, and they will be holding their election at the AMO 2026 as well, for those who wish to pursue that position. Short of, at this point in time, I've already been registered through this is just an example, I've already been registered for Roma through the county. And I would be attending the AMO board through the county. So I'm the timing kind of is unfortunate, but one of the questions I had was, would this preclude someone who is appointed through the county to a specific board, or the warden I think it's important that the warden attend as many conferences as possible that her time allows. So I just would like to know, by reducing this to 1, does that preclude those who have been appointed to other boards or the warden from attending those conferences?
I'm going to look to the clerk to provide clarification on our current policy. Thank you.
Excuse me, thank you. If this motion were to go through and councillors were reduced to the 1 conference, our staff's interpretation of the policy is that there is a separate section that deals with councillors holding positions on executive committees of associations. So it says that they may attend any meetings or conferences on those associations in addition to the other provisions in the policy. So our interpretation of that is that
if you hold a position on the association, you would still be able to attend that conference through Grey County, in addition to the one conference that counselor may attend. With regards to the warden, it is my understanding from the previous discussion was that the warden's attendance at conferences would remain status quo, so that hasn't been considered in this motion or in the potential reduction that has been put forward.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion. We'll go to Councillor McKay.
Yeah, thank you. Being a director on Good Roads, we're treated fairly reasonable, and Good Roads pays my motel expense and my travel expense and my meals. So really the only thing for our meetings, I hand back into the township that pays me for that now. Roma could be a little cheaper, I am not sure. So, but I know we've tried over the years. And when I bring it up at our directors meeting about joining together, they said they've tried, and they're rejected. Now, I'm wondering what it's like on the other hand with Roma, whether Roma brings up this discussion too, and they blame it on Good Roads. So I'm not sure how it works out. So anyway, maybe my partner over here can explain something.
Councillor Nielsen, did I see your hands up?
I think we should get on topic for what we're actually here to do. The Grey County budget, we can discuss relationships between Good Roads and Roma offline.
Okay, and my thanks to all the members and all the representation that they hold on these larger organizations. We've heard about the value that we have by having dialogues across our province from those different perspectives, and we have excellent representation around this horseshoe. So with that, I will look for any other further comments on what we are discussing, which is the motion to reduce 2 conferences down to 1 conference allowance for county council members. Okay, no further discussion I see, so therefore I'll call the question. All those in favor of reducing it down to 1? Okay, and all those against? Okay, so that motion fails, Madam Clerk. All right, so I'm going to invite the CAO back to provide a bit of a recap and of the proposed and approved budget changes, along with some visuals to walk us through. We do have some motions outstanding, so CAO, if you want to get started.
Thank you, Warden. So again, just as a bit of a recap, and this slide is a recap of where we started and some proposed changes to the budget, as well as some changes that have already been approved by the committee at the last meeting. So with respect to at the top line there, you see that was the original levy before we started the budget discussions. We were sitting at a net levy increase of 6.68%. As was noted earlier, the forest tenders came in higher than anticipated. So there's an additional $14,100 that we're going to receive through those forest harvests. So that results in a 0.02% decrease if, again, council supports the addition of that as a change to the proposed draft budget. Debenture payments. So as council may recall, what was put forward as a potential option to reduce the budget was that we have 3 internally financed debentures that are levy funded: Paramedic Services, Chatsworth Base, Grey Gables, associated with a capital project previously, as well as the Amin Building addition. Those are the 3 projects that we're currently self-debenturing. All are coming due in and around the 2030 year. So using some of the surplus funds from one-time funding, again, some of that is we have very healthy reserve right now in the one-time funding reserve. That's based on some of the increases we've seen with the investments over the past number of years, as well as some surpluses from year ends. So with that results in a reduction if, again, committee supported that reduction of $845,200. That will be a 1.05% reduction to the net levy requirement. Based on a motion that was already passed, based on discussions in closed session, you would see that would use a one-time funding reserve to help offset an anticipated expense that was discussed in closed session. That would result in a $227,000 reduction from the draft budget. So that'd be a decrease of 0.28%. Based on the motion that was just passed, social pinpoint, reduction of $30,000, that would be a reduction of 0.04%. The motion previously passed at the last meeting regarding removing the proposed climate change coordinator FTE in the 2026 budget, that results in a $92,300 reduction, 0.12%. The deferral of the Ayton-based construction to 2027. Again, that was a motion that was previously passed. That won't result in any reduction in 2026, but as you'll see, there is a reduction in 2027 of $8,700. We do note though that this will result in an increase of just over $5,000 additional levy for the following 25 years based on the term of expected debenture post 2027. So based on all those proposed changes, as well as the changes that have already been approved by committee, we potentially could be sitting at a proposed levy increase of 5.17%. Again, what that translates into, so where when we started, and you can see just based on the levy increase of 6.68% as part of the original draft budget, that results in, on the average single detached home in Grey County is assessed at $296,000. That's an estimated increase of $82.60 from when we started. Based on a levy increase of 5.17% that would result in an estimated increase to the average single detached home not on water of $63.94. And if council wanted to look for other opportunities to reduce it down to say below 5%, so just picking a number of 4.99%, that results in an estimated increase of $61.76. So not to use the coffee analogy, but that's essentially just over $2 difference to get it down to a further 0.18%. Based on the average single detached home not on water. As mentioned and previously at the last meeting, staff put forward a couple of other options if council wanted to get the 5.17% down further. One is the road exchange and looking at offsetting using some one-time funding to help phase in the cost of the overall road exchange. We anticipate that the road transfers won't actually incur until later next year at the earliest. And so we feel that this actually aligns better with the actual anticipated timing of the transfers. And therefore, we consider this a low-risk item if council wanted to reduce the budget even further beyond where it currently stands. So one option, as you can see, the second bottom line there on that table, one option would be to see 75% of the cost for the road exchange funded from levy in 2026 and 25% being funded from one-time funding reserves. So that equates to about $310,000 reduction, which would result in a 0.39% decrease. That would bring down the 2026 proposed changes to 4.78%. As noted at the last meeting, though, this could result in a net levy increase of 0.36% in 2027, as we'd be shifting some of the burden to next year's budget. But again, given the anticipated timing of the actual transfers, we think this risk is fairly low. Combined with the other recommended changes and the already approved changes, again, this would result in a net levy increase of 4.78%. Second option is very similar to the previous option, although this one would be splitting it in half. So 50% being funded from levy in 2026, 50% from one-time funding to help phase in those costs. That would result in a total 0.77% reduction. So that would get you approximately to 4.4%. So those are just two other options that council can consider as part of the current proposed changes that are before council. And at this stage, staff are just looking for further direction from council in terms of how they would like to proceed so that we can amend the budget, bring that back as a bylaw to council on January 8th so that council can consider approving that amended budget. We'd be happy taking questions.
Okay, let's go to some questions on those slides. Maybe if maybe the last two slides might be the most relevant for us to be able to see. And have these been circulated to council members? Okay, we might have to do some flipping back and forth so that people have the information in front of them, because that's a lot of numbers to crunch without seeing them. So we'll go to Councillor Body.
So Randy, I'm getting the feeling we're not as close as everyone else seems to think that we are on road exchange, but maybe I'm out to lunch on that. When you're talking about those amounts, are you talking about a one-time lump sum going from one, upper tier to lower tier all in 1 year? Or has there been any discussion of sort of amortizing that over 2 or 3 years or 4 years?
This is where I'm going to default to our financial expertise with finance staff. So Garrett Reed.
Yeah, through the warden, this might have to be a bit of a team effort on the answer. But the $1.24 million that's being included in 2026's budget is just the payment to lower tiers that is involved within the road transfer. In 2027, that payment goes up to approximately $2.2 million. That payment is annualized every year for the next 10 years and increases slightly with inflation. It is offset by the operational savings that we expect to see by the road exchanges. So that includes the roads that we will no longer be taking care of, the urbans that we won't have, and then additionally some potential for some revenue for us continuing to do maybe some work on those roads that will now be under the lower tiers possession. But those payments will continue for the next 10 years.
Okay, so that answers Councillor Body's question. Can I ask, I think it's maybe your slide deck. We really need to see this information. And so, yeah, if we could, thank you, at least have that one, and then we can flip to the one further if there's a question. Okay, so other questions from council members? Committee of the whole members? We'll go to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Body did a good job of refreshing my memory and making sure I was correct too in that. But from your statement, Randy, you said that we're anticipating later in the year doing this transition. Staff's anticipation is, regardless of the timing in the year that we do the transition, the same lump sum payment for year one is to be incorporated in the budget, because it's not like the payment is matched to timing of a year and how much money we've already spent on the roads. In other words, I guess in my own mind, if the transfer happens in September, but between January and September, Grey County has already been taking care of those roads and doing all the works and all the repairs or et cetera, we're not decreasing the first year's payment based upon that transition date.
And again, I'm gonna look to my friends in finance to, as well as Pat, to help with this. Be a team effort.
I wasn't supposed to have to say anything today. No, they based on the date, like we're hoping maybe early summer, but the payment would be prorated. That was what we're anticipating. So like the savings is modified as well, because we'll be taking care of all those urbans for the winter, the hardest part of winter. Well, hopefully, from January to the end of March or whatever. So that's kind of where the savings are coming from. Just that delay in our savings, for one, taking care of the urbans. And then 2026, it's not like there's a whole bunch of road exchange work ready to go. Like we're talking, we probably paint some of the roads we're getting, but there's no capital construction ready to go on the roads that we're adopting.
Okay, other discussion? Counselor Greg?
And I just want to take a moment here. I wonder if there's not some confusion around the room between the urban road transfers and download and the road transfers, because the urban road download is basically an in and an out. It's the big one is the transfers with the capital projects coming forward that we have to account for reconstruction. I don't know if staff just want to speak a little bit more to the separation, because I get the feeling here there's some confusion between the 10-year payments to municipalities, which is new, but there's an outgoing component there. And part two, the big cost is the road exchanges, Ayton Road, whatever. So if you just want to speak to that, I think there's maybe some confusion in the room here.
Yes, I think like going back to the original, when we talked about maybe just doing the rural, what I call rural exchanges, I guess. The amount of work required in the roads we'd be taking roads that are in worse condition than the roads we're giving up was a huge number. Like it was 2.4 million a year. And that's where kind of the urban, aside from all the other positives of kind of getting out of everyone's business in the urbans, there is that money to be saved in maintenance. And it's basically the reason why we want kind of a two-pronged thing together. So we're taking on some future, commitments in the roads being probably where they should be, county road wise, really. And then, and getting out of the urbans, aside from just the positive getting out of the urbans, it's that $1 million approximately a year we're saving in winter maintenance on urban roads that are going to be owned by the lower tiers. So that's kind of how the two of them end up with that 1.4 million number.
Okay, other discussion? Okay, I don't see any further hands. CEO, do you have anything else that you want to cover? Okay, so we have a number of items that would need to be in the form of a motion in order to proceed next. And then over the lunch break, if we can get to the final decisions, then over the lunch break, the budget team would be able to crunch the numbers into the final motions that we'd have to pass in the rest of the agenda. So let's try to see how far in we can get. We're approaching that lunch mark, and we want to be able to provide enough direction to staff to know what they're working with. So Madam Clerk, do you want to put up the first recommended motion? Okay. Oh, is it up there? Well, I can't see it. Okay, so the first one to consider was due to the increase in revenue. So this, if only all of our motions could be like this. The first recommendation is that the draft 2026 budget be amended to incorporate an increase in forestry revenue in the amount of 14,100. Councillor Dobreen is moving it. Councillor Nielsen is seconding it. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, thank you. So that takes care of that. Okay, so the next one is a group, right? CEO, this is that total.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all related to that.
Okay, so, and again, oh, this is awkward that we don't have the slide. We're not able to see the slide. Yeah. No, but if you can recall the chart that was just presented to us that had the breakdown and the big ticket item, that was the savings, that was described as these three parts. So the recommendation, if we were to go that route, would be that the draft 2026 budget be amended by removing the expense for the Grey County's self-financed debentures as follows. There are three. This is how it's broken down. Chatsworth Paramedic Services base would save this budget for 65,425. Grey Gables, 73,235, and the administration building in which we sit right now, 706,540. And yes, that was presented just recently by the CAO, of a total of 845,200, which translates to a reduction in the levy of 1.05%, all three of them together. So I'll ask then if there's a mover for that recommendation. That's moved by Councillor Kentner, seconded by Councillor Carlton. It's now on the floor for discussion. We're looking at all three of those items together for the totals that I just mentioned. Question, or go ahead, Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden Matusoff. The motion itself just says we're removing the expense from this county's self-funded. So just for clarity, there's no money coming out of one-time funding reserve to pay off this debenture. We are just saying that we're not going to add the 845,000, I think it was, into the one-time debenture because we're saying we're clearing ourselves of our own debt. I just want to make sure I understand the actual meat of what we're doing here.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to call Director Spicer to repeat that because this is very significant in the discussion. And I think it's very healthy that we all follow it through one more time through. And that it is, Director Spicer, if you could also just revisit why it works for this particular year in terms of the timing of what we've been doing year by year by year. And now is the moment. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. So Councillor Nielsen is correct. There isn't another part that we have borrowed this money from ourselves. So it's from our own non-obligatory reserves. And so in accounting speak, an obligatory reserve at the county level is gas tax funding and development charges. So we've borrowed from bank accounts, reserves. So we would pay off these debentures. And then we would also, at year-end surplus deficit, we'll just ask you for a motion at that time to fund the repayment, and it comes out of the one-time funding reserve because it was self-financed as opposed to we're going through a bank or Infrastructure Ontario. And with regard to the question about why now? So we embarked on a number of projects over the years. And so for Greg Abels, that was the first self-financed one. And it was a means of avoiding a spike in the levy for something that we hadn't had in the budget. And then with the Chatsworth Paramedic Base, we moved on and we said, okay, doing that base, it made sense that we were going to finance it. We had the money to finance it ourselves. And the interest rates that we were charging ourselves for those were like all under around the 3% range, a bit less. Interest rates were very different. Administration one is the most recent. The administration building expansion and renovation occurred in 2018. And again, it made sense that we issued that as a self-financed debenture. We had the funds and we would repay ourselves over the term of what we considered an appropriate life. So as Randy mentioned, these all will mature in the early 2030, 2031s. And we looked at this and said, we could pay these off early. It reduces our investment income that we're going to charge for these budgets. But then it frees up that amount on our annual repayment limit with the province, the ARL, and it reduces the budget by over, it's $845,200. So originally the plan was when Greg Abels' roof was paid off, that money would go into the Greg Abels reserve for building maintenance. Administration, when that was paid off, we were going to take those funds and recommend to council that it went to the housing reserve and it would be a one-time boost in that year and it would increase their baseline transfer to reserve. And Chatsworth Paramedic Base, it would have been the same thing. Those funds we would have recommended to you that would, instead of it being a debenture payment to ourselves, that we would transfer those funds to the Paramedic Services Reserve because we know that we'll have future building and equipment needs. And at that point, the Owen Sound base was opened in 2004. So we'd be sitting with our oldest building at 27 years old. So that was the premise behind how what we were going to do with the funds when they matured, or recommend to you how we would handle the funds. And of course, that would have been up to the discretion of the council of the day.
Okay, thank you. So with that then, further discussion? Okay, so we do have it moved and seconded. It's on the floor. It is all together with those three items with the totals that you've mentioned. And thank you again for explaining why this is an option for us to consider at this point in time. Okay, I don't see any further hands, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion that we have? And that motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much, Director Spicer. So the last item before I ask if there's anything else, but the last one is the road exchanges. Now, let's see, there were two different presentations that CAO Schertzer had provided for us. One is that the road exchanges be funded by 75% levy and 25% from one-time funding reserve. And the other was, which would be a reduction of 0.39%, which would bring the grand total down to 4.78. The other option that he presented was to change it to a 50-50 instead of 75-25, which would reduce the levy down by 0.77%, which would bring it down to 4.40. There, however, where there's a reduction in 2026, there is to counter check that an increase in 2027. So I wonder if we might put those. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. The deputy clerk is already aware. She's already preparing the two options in front of us so we can have that with clarity. But we just don't have the percentages. So reduction of 0.39% versus 0.77%, or do nothing. And it doesn't actually say what the change would be, but there would be a slight increase in 2027 if we go for the bigger savings this time. If we go for option 2, it would be saving now in 2026, a slight increase in 2027 instead. All right, there. So option 2 would read the exact same thing, except it would be a 50-50. Okay, so those are options before us, or do nothing, or come up with something else. It's at the county's, at county council's privilege now to suggest what direction we go in. We'll go to Councillor Eccles.
My arm was getting sore going up and down. I'd like to move option 1 for the fact that for a large part of the rural road exchange is a one-time funding. It is a one-time. I certainly don't expect any of the roads to go back up and forth, but 75% of that is going forward on the levy to cover the cost on the urban road exchange as well too, going forward. So to do that and do it at this time and get to a budget percentage that I feel comfortable with, this is a very low risk option, and moves us forward for the advancement of the county infrastructure, road infrastructure exchange and system that would benefit the communities at large. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's moved by Councillor Eccles. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor DeBreen. It's now on the floor for discussion. We are discussing the 75% from the roads exchanges be funded 75% from the levy and the other 25% coming from one-time funding. As per the rationale described by Director Spicer, that would result in reducing the levy percentage by 0.39%, which would bring down the proposed levy to 4.78%. That's what we're currently discussing on the floor. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Ward Matusoff. Just a question, I guess, for Randy. When we were going through this just a second ago at the podium, you're saying staff are seeing this as a low risk option, but there's still the possibility, like, just for confirmation, the impact of 2027. The original presentation last Friday said we're going to see a 0.36% to 2027. Today, it didn't show that in the first graph, but you're saying it's still possible that that's going to happen. where are staff landing on the impact of this decision to 2027?
Through you, Warden, we are still projecting that to be a 0.36% increase in 2027. But until we go through the actual transfer process, till we see what the actual costs are in 2026, those are estimates at this stage in terms of what those costs would be. Because we are again estimating, projecting what savings would result by transferring those roads, as Director Hoy indicated earlier. And then the costs are fixed in terms of the Urban Transition Fund. We know that cost, but the other costs are estimates based on the best information that we have, and are all dependent on the timing of the actual transfers and when those actually occur. So it's a bit of an estimate, but we're estimating right now that it would be a 0.36% increase in the 2027 based on the best information we have at this stage.
Thank you very much for that, CEO Schutzer. So then, if we look at the budget packet we've received today, the estimate for next budget cycle, the 2027 budget, is already higher than where we started this one today. We also know that the 2025 projected versus the 2026 reality was short a significant sum of money. That is, it caused an increase in the projection. So the 2027 budget right now is a projection. We don't like 5.17, and we're going to put on 2027 a starting point of 8 because we don't want to deal with 5.17 today. It doesn't make sense to me. And I understand, like, to me, it's the proverbial kick in the can, literally, in this situation. Like, you're just saying 2027, you guys deal with it because we want to look pretty today in 2026. This isn't a very logical motion to me. And I won't be able to support it. I think option number 3, stick it to the way it is. If we're going to do the Urban Road Exchange, fund it the way it should be funded, stick to the principles and move it forward.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? Okay, I'm not seeing any further hands up, nothing online. Okay, the clerk is just removing the option 2 because we're focused on option 1 at the moment. Okay, all right. With no further hands then, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? And all those opposed? So that motion is defeated. Okay, so what we will do at this point in time, is there anything else that needs to be raised before the clerks take away, the finance team takes away the current numbers the way we sit? I see your hand. I see your hand. Hold on a second. Just wanted to finish my sentence. Councillor Eccles.
Ask for recorded vote.
Okay, so we're going back to the vote. And we'll wait for the clerks.
So a recorded vote on the road exchanges being funded by 75% levy and 25% one-time funding. Councillor Mackey. Councillor Mackey opposed. Councillor McKay. Opposed. Councillor Carlton. Opposed. Councillor Pringle. In favor. Councillor McQueen. Opposed. Councillor Nielsen. Opposed, Councillor Patterson. Opposed, Councillor Dickert. Opposed, Counselor Kentner. Opposed, Counselor Keaveney. Opposed, Counselor Body. In favor, Counselor Gregg. In favor, Counselor Milne. Opposed. Sorry, was there an error there? Yeah, Counselor. Counselor Gregg. Oh, yeah. There we go. Sorry, Counselor Body and Greg both voted in favor, is that correct? Counselor Milne opposed. Counselor DeBreen. Counselor DeBreen in favor. Warden Matrosovs. In favor. In favor. Counselor Bordignon.
In favor.
In favor. Counselor Echols. In favor. Counselor Alternate Counselor Doug Hutchinson. In favor. That is carried with a vote of 50 to 46. Sorry, there's an incredible delay.
Okay, so when it's, as it's been done as a recorded vote and weighted therefore, it is now at 50 versus 46. So that means that it does pass. Okay, thank you. With that, is there anything else? Yes, Counselor Gregg.
Thanks for obliging me here. I've got a couple questions. When circling back to the 1% for the Housing Affordability Fund, what's the contribution that we currently have on the document in front of us now? Because 1% of levy. So is this number responding to the 1%? Has it been adjusted, or is it still considering the 1% of the 6.87, which is in the draft? Is my first question.
Okay, who would like to take that? Sorry. Come on up. And what we're going to do is we'll ask any further questions that staff may need to know in order to prepare the next presentation to us after lunch, and then we are calling lunch. So if you want to just go ahead and provide an answer, but if you need more time to figure out any of the questions that come forward, that will be your moment over the lunch hour.
Thank you, through the warden. The current number in the 2026 budget is $718,900. So it is not at 1% of the proposed or at 1% of where we're currently sitting. Staff, as Anne-Marie mentioned, in previous budgets had not kept up the 1% due to other budget pressures. So we had proposed in this budget phasing it in. So there's a large increase in the 26 budget as well as the 27 budget, with the hope of getting to the 1% by that point in time. But even with the motions that have happened so far, we still aren't at 1% in the 26 budget.
Okay, I know you don't want to entertain too much discussion here before lunch, but I'm just wondering, we do have $30,000, which is runs somewhat parallel to the housing affordability, which is under a different funding envelope in the budget. That's the housing affordability, or the housing action plan has a $30,000 contribution. So I think there's probably merit in considering that. My other question is, when that policy is created, you probably don't want to envision that 1% every year. If your levy is a 9% increase, that's probably not what you base your decision making off of. It's probably something more relative to 4 or 5%, maybe 3%. So we do have the hardest reserve for us to follow, I think, through the years, the one-time funding reserve. Greater than 1% of the investment income goes to the one-time funding reserve. I'm just wondering, what potential is there to allocate, determine a fixed value for the levy contribution, whether it's 3%. And then when you have a levy increase above that, you actually run a value off of that, run it in parallel with your 1% policy from investment income. So you're drawing from that investment income, and then it's still remaining funds from that greater than one, but it's greater than one plus your variable from your levy to where you want to be, draw from your investment income to fund that discrepancy. Instead of just placing it right on the levy, because it does make it a little bit more transparent, because right now we haven't been provided a guiding document that just shows for council all the ins and outs through the year of the one-time funding reserve. Nobody, I think, could walk us through, of the 18 of us, a simple ins and outs of all that. And we should, I think, have more information on that usage of the one-time funding reserve. So I just wonder if there's some conversation that we could have about utilizing some of that greater than 1%, because last year I think we were just under 5% in total return on our investment portfolio across, I think, 3 different short-term holdings, long-term funds. So I think some of that conversation could be had, or more response from staff. And they might have a question for me to provide more clarity. I hope I've been somewhat clear in terms of what kind of allocation that I think we could consider.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to leave it with staff to come back after the break to provide any information that council would need to take into consideration, and having heard the scenario that Councillor Greig has laid out. And of course, you're welcome to provide any further clarity if you're not sure if it was clear what you were trying to explain. Okay, and anything else for contemplation for staff over lunch? Okay, I'm not seeing anything else. So in that case, then we are going to break, and we will come back at 1:30 to complete the rest of the agenda, which of course includes the percentage after growth and the expenditures and taxation. We'll need to proceed with item 6 on the published agenda. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, Committee of the Whole. We are back and present. Our senior management is with us, and they have worked over lunch in order to be able to prepare us with what we need to contemplate next. So if you look up on the screen, it's also it was in the posted agenda, but there we go. We've got the figures filled in for you. Just before we get to that motion, though, I'm going to ask CAO if you want to start us off on a response to the discussion item that was left before us before lunch by Councillor Greig. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Warden Matrosovs. And during the lunch break, we had a good discussion with Councillor Greig just to understand some of the question and information. Through that discussion, staff did note that we are planning to look at our overall reserve policy and reserves. We also have abilities through the Questiga, which is the new budget software that we use to be able to understand and be able to reflect better information back to council in terms of all the various ins and outs of those reserves. We do try to capture that whenever we're proposing using one-time funding reserves through our reports to recognize what we're projecting and estimating at year end. We also did provide a document at the last budget meeting on the overall reserves where we're projecting those to be based on all the items and all the expenses that are anticipated. That doesn't reflect the decisions, obviously, that were made earlier today, but we'll be updating those reserve charts, and we're happy to share those back with council in terms of what we're estimating and projecting the reserves to be at the end of 2026 with all of our expenditures. But as noted, staff are planning to bring forward a staff report regarding our reserves and look at our reserve policies and as well as our investment policy at the same time. And we can bring those matters forward to council in 2026 and have a good, fruitful discussion at that time.
Okay, thank you very much for providing that information and giving us the next step on that so that we can contemplate that into our next year. And knowing that you've already been allocated time, staff resources and time to enter into this topic anyway is good to know. Okay, so is there any further discussion on that question? Okay. Yes, Councillor Gregg?
Sorry, and the only thing or item that was I spoke of it that I won't raise again is the $30,000 for the housing action plan. It's actually being funded from reserve contributions anyway, so it's a non-issue. $4,200 a year is attributed to that, and we're just drawing from it. So same as council laptops in the election year. So I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no further hands up, we can direct our attention then to the motion that is still that will need to be moved in order for us to close the budget off. So it is recommended that the 2026 budget be adopted as amended by proposing a levy increase of 4.78% after growth, and that a bylaw be brought forward to adopt the estimates of revenues and expenditures for the year 2026, requiring a total to be raised from taxation in 2026 of $83,951,800. May I ask for a mover? Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Mackey. Any discussion? No? Okay, then all those in favor? And that motion is passed. Okay, thank you very much. With that, we do not have any closed matters that needed to be discussed with relation to the budget, and we will then just move on to other business. This, of course, being a special meeting that was called specifically for the budget. Yes, CAO, go ahead.
Thank you, Warden. I just want to take this time to thank the finance team, Mary Lou, our Director of Finance, Sue Murray's, Garrett Reed, Marcus, who is probably back at his desk working hard on long-term care budget stuff, all the financial analysts. You heard a number of the directors mention the financial analysts throughout their budget presentations. We could not do this without the work of our finance team, and we so appreciate all their help and support. Also, special thanks to the senior management team and everyone has been involved in putting this budget together. We will, of course, bring back an amended budget at the January 8th meeting, but I just want to thank everybody who's been involved with this, and I appreciate council's patience and direction that they've been provided today, and we will gladly bring that forward back to the January 8th meeting for council's consideration.
Indeed, thank you. And it certainly was a demonstration of our Team Gray pulling together, our staff working with our council members to try to best understand and make the best decisions and look for all of the ways in which we could consider our options. It was would not be possible without the support of all the staff, and I'm glad you've named the individuals that are often quiet in the background that we never necessarily see in presentations, but are doing that hard concrete work that we need to embrace in order for us to make our decisions. And my thanks to council for, again, once again, putting your heart and thoughts and careful mindfulness into this and asking the questions so that we could truly understand where it is that we need to go today, but also what we need to do about our future. So thank you for that. So with that, the last item is a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Dobreen. Any discussion on adjourning? All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you.